Okay, so welcome everybody to the regular board meeting at the Captiva Erosion Prevention District on this Monday, April 11th.
April the 12th.
April the 12th, 2 days from my birthday, mind you.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you, 2021. Note to self, March 8th. And I can't get the Law and Order sound on my phone, so I have to go. Oh, I banged Kelly twice. Oh, right. Well, I'll have to resign. I'm sorry. I banged twice. I'm only kidding.
Stick to the
Once. Okay, so we start with the roll. The meeting will now come to order. And do we have any commissioners requesting to appear remotely?
Yes, Commissioner Mullins is appearing remotely.
And a motion to allow commissioners to appear remotely. Is there a motion?
I motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, there's no discussion. Administrative Director, please call the roll.
Chairman, I'm sorry, Commissioner Medill,
Here.
Chairman Medill, sorry, Vice Chairman Sylvia,
Here.
Treasurer Pyle,
Here.
Secretary Kaiser,
Here.
and Commissioner Mullins.
Here. A question
Okay.
regarding what you just did, Renee. We have never done that before. Is this something new that is required, Ralph? That
No, it was written to me. I'm just being the happy puppet.
Well, this is Ralph, under the Attorney General's opinions. It says that a commissioner can appear remotely if approved by the local governing body. Typically, you have to have some emergency reason. If it's health related, you don't need to disclose it here at a public meeting. But
Got it. Thank you.
it's a good idea to request and then approve.
Okay, thank you.
I'm also appearing today as the CEPD attorney remotely for a health reason.
Right. And Dick wants to say something, sorry.
Yeah, I thought anybody who is not present can be counted towards the quorum or for any vote.
There has to be 3 physical,
Yes,
and then you can include other
and then you can
commissioners.
include their vote.
As long as there's 3 physically present.
Has to be three of us here.
Quorum in person, and then all of you can decide who participates remotely, and that individual can still speak, can still vote. But
So I could go home now and get back on because there are 3 other
Absolutely.
people here.
you could. Well, we don't want you to, but you could.
Okay, so as long as there's 3 people in the
Three.
physical quorum,
Right.
I don't have to be here.
Correct. You can
And I have the
participate
same
remotely.
rights. I have the same rights.
Yes. There just has to be a physical quorum. And
Okay.
I added that to Renee's agenda because I learned that from my other job. So I wanted us to be consistent
Yeah,
as
well, that's very.
And
good
I'm
to know.
learning it right now for the very first time.
Mr. Brooks stated.
I'm now just discovering that. So, okay, so are there any changes or additions to the agenda? Mike, changes or additions to the agenda? No, we're doing.
I did have an issue with something in the minutes that I wrote to Jennifer. We exchanged a couple of emails. And I wanted to have an opportunity to discuss that. So you and Jennifer can decide when in the context of the meeting it should occur.
So you want to change, so there's a request for a change.
Yes, may staff clarify that? So what we would like to do is under administrative reports, I have Dan, our technical director, set to deliver an update on the project. At that time, I would like him also to include an in-depth discussion regarding apportionment.
Got it.
As emails that I received from Commissioner Mullins from last night, I was able to respond to this morning, but I'd like him
So
to
that's fine, but do we need a motion?
You do need a
All right, Is
motion.
there a motion to put an ad on the agenda during the apportionment?
I'll motion.
Second? Anyone
I'll
want to?
second it.
All right, fair enough. Okay, so all in favor?
I-
Aye.
We're good,
I'm sorry, Chairman, may I interrupt?
yes.
John, I just received an email from Steve Patel from the county who stated that the agenda information listed for remote public access is coming back as restricted access only.
He has to log into Zoom.
What?
He has to log into Zoom.
Okay,
Also, there's other people that want to log in. They thought they could come in from the website. Is that not the case?
There is a link to it on the website.
Perfect, okay. All right, that's important. Fantastic.
I had the same issue on one of my computers, and I'm assuming we've done this since we got hacked at one point in time. We're trying to control access, correct?
Yes, we just want to make sure everybody who's coming in logs into Zoom.
We don't know if we
Yeah,
were.
legally, it makes sense to me, but legally, we should ask our attorney whether or not that is in fact legal under sunshine laws to require somebody to have to log in to join the meeting. Ralph, do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I believe the meeting is open to the public in person if they want to go to Tween Waters to attend the meeting. We are allowing a hybrid where as an additional way of attending the meeting, you can attend by Zoom. And it's my understanding, John can confirm that there is a public Zoom link as well as a Zoom link for the board members. I think they may be different links. Is that correct, John?
No, they're the same. I promote the board members to panelists when they decide to come in.
Perfect.
Sorry,
All right, so-
I'm sorry.
Okay.
According to staff at the county, they're stating that they're not able to log in via Zoom.
All right, so why don't we reach out? I see Jay Brown and Bob Gray. Text them and ask them if they're in and they're hearing everything, but they're not getting kicked out because they're up. Don't even have to ask them. Well, while we're dealing with that, why don't we just move on to the approval of the minutes like Harry so.
I'll make a motion to approve of the minutes of the February 19th meeting, special meeting, and the March 8th meeting, regular board meeting. We accept them as printed.
I thought, Jennifer, you had talked with Mullins about some kind of change in the minutes?
Well, no, it
No,
wasn't a
changing the
change.
agenda
Change agenda.
to
Yeah.
discuss something that occurred in the February meeting in the February 8th minute.
Then I'll second Howard's
Yeah,
motion.
right, that's it, okay, all in favor?
All right.
All right.
I'm not going to vote in favor because I'd like to clarify for the board first what the issue is, because I'm not sure that this belongs later on. I don't want to accept the minutes as written, given what I think seems to be either an oversight or discrepancy. So take a minute
All right, well.
to decide whether or not we dealt. Trade.
Mike, you're not coming through on your phone.
Well, we're discussing the minute with a
So
motion
in
to
other words, acoustically, your phone is not working. It's down, well, that's what it sounds like. Okay,
Let me clarify what Mike's trying to say. So Mike sent us all an email last night at around 9:30 PM. He sent it to the entire board and our staff. And in it, his concern was that in the February minutes, I made a commitment that we would be voting on apportionment for the March meeting. What I understood and what transpired based on my notes, and especially since Bob Gray's last visit, where he came on February the 25th, my understanding was that we realistically have until the project is complete to be able to decide on the apportionment model. The reason that we did not vote on the apportionment model is because on February 26th, Mike and Bob Gray, our consultant, went to lunch in Captiva, and Bob came back and reported to Dan and I that he wanted to see a third apportionment model. And so we did not vote on it because we were still working on this apportionment model, this third alternative. Yeah, this third alternative. So we did not vote on that in March. So the other thing that I understood from my notes was that we were going to have a public meeting where the public could come, and we were going to do a town hall that would show the public, members of the public, our plan for the project, because our goal was to complete that by the time we had our bids in, which they will be in and we're able to open by next Thursday on the 22nd. And so it was my understanding, based on notes from another meeting that I had with Chairman Mullins, that we wanted to do a town hall meeting and possibly combine.
Excuse me, not Chairman Mullins. Not
Sorry,
Chairman Mullins.
Commissioner Mullins, and be able to do a combined town hall where we communicated the plan of the project to the public. In addition, Dan could review the now 3 options for apportionment. So that is why we did not vote in the March meeting for apportionment, because we now have a third.
but Jennifer, we understand. I'm just saying there's an issue with a certain portion of the minutes, and it's going to be discussed when Dan talks about the apportionment, then how do we accept the other 99%? Can't we just say, okay, well, there is an issue with that and we're going to address it, but what is the Roberts Rules
You can do
technicality?
that. You can do that. The technically, I believe, and Ralph, feel free to weigh in on this. But now that I think about it, I believe the minutes would have to be redone. And then we'd have to submit them for the next meeting to be voted on.
Or just the addendum, however it's termed. All right, so let's move on. I don't want to spend 20 minutes talking about something that we can deal with when we've already agreed to deal with it at a later time. Okay, so now,
Renee, with all due respect, I've raised an objection. We're still in discussion about it. You don't get to, by fiat, decide there's enough of the discussion, but I haven't had much of a chance to talk at all. So, no, listen, let me finish, please. So fundamentally, what I'm trying to say is what it brings out to me is that last year at some point in time, we identified the need to have action items created out of every meeting. So it's clear to everybody specific things that require follow-up action and who's responsible. That doesn't seem to be consistently in the minutes. Furthermore, what happens is this particular item, I don't disagree that the facts may have come out the way Jennifer said them, but you don't just suddenly decide to say something in one meeting, it's going to be done in March, and then never even discuss it in the March meeting and assume that whatever happened in between takes care of it. It should be expressly discussed and saying, even though we promised this for the March meeting, we've decided with some changes that we're going to reschedule it. And then in Jennifer's email to me, so all I'm saying is I think that it's important that we get these action items back on the table here so that we stop dropping these things through the cracks between
isn't that
meetings.
what we discussed when Daniel talks about apportionment? That was the agreement 5 minutes ago. So why are we readdressing it?
I'll vote against the minutes, that's all.
Fair enough. There we go. Okay, so,
On the minutes,
what's that?
call the vote on the
So
minutes.
on the February 19th minutes, Vice Chairman Sylvia,
Yes.
Treasurer Pyle,
Approved.
Secretary Kaiser,
Yes,
Commissioner Mullins,
Nay.
Nay,
and Chairman Neville.
I approve. We understand.
4-1, the minutes are approved.
Okay, can we now go to public comments?
March 8th minutes now.
The March
We just
8th.
did February 19th, now we also need to do.
Oh,
March 8th
forgive
minutes.
me. Oh, I'm sorry, see? Not doing a good job. All right, so let's go right to the March 8th minutes. We will now dispense with the reading of the minutes for the March 8th, 2021 board meeting. Do I have a motion to approve and dispense the reading of the March 8th, 2021 minutes?
I have a motion.
Is there a second?
and I'll second it.
All right, is there any discussion? Okay, then let's, Administrative Director, please call the vote.
Vice Chairman Sylvia,
Yes.
Treasurer Pyle,
Approved.
Secretary Kaiser,
Yes,
Commissioner Mullins,
Nay.
and Chairman Neville.
Yes.
4-1, the minutes pass.
Okay, now, public comments. John, how do we set that up? These people, did anyone raise their hand?
Yeah, if anyone could raise their hand.
If anyone wants to address the board with public comment, please raise your hand at this time and I will allow you to speak.
Give them, what, 20 seconds? Because some of them might be trying to raise their hand or something. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. All right, that's it. Let's move on. Okay. Here we go. Okay, item number 5, the financial reports. Item A, the budget performance. We will now move on to the financial reports. Mr. Treasurer, AKA Richard Pyle.
Yes,
Can you please update the board on our budget?
I've reviewed the balance sheet and income statement for the CEPD General Fund and the Capital Fund as of March 31st, which is the halfway point for our fiscal year. And the finances appear to be still in very good shape. The overall net income year to date for the general fund is about $550,000. that included money that came in from transfers as well as the parking lot revenue. By the way, the parking lot revenue in the month of March alone was almost $100,000.
No,
We're running well ahead of our budget.
that parking lot is jammed. I only wish they would continue trying to fix the entrance way.
We have Grady continually filling it. So
We'll talk
there's,
about that in administrative report.
Okay.
Okay, and the capital fund year-to-date shows a net income of about $500,000. So between the two funds, it's just about $1 million worth of increased net income. And the balance sheet shows in the general fund total assets of $824,000 versus $450,000 a year ago. And for the capital fund, it shows total assets of $4.4 million, up from $3.8 million a year ago, about a $600,000 improvement. And we have total current assets of a little over $4 million.
Is that domiciled? I mean, there's 4 million in, actually, oh, there it is, right there.
Investments.
Actually, in the accounts.
In the accounts.
Right. Director Nelson, I have a question. Do you think now would be the time just to put out the commercial that we will be having
Let's do that during administrative update.
for next week? Yeah.
I'll
I
talk
just wanted to, and also, since we are talking about finances, will it be a time to talk about, you and I had a full conversation regarding banks to talk to as far as maybe some banks are better than other banks when it comes to domiciling the assets.
I recall a conversation, are you talking about for the,
Just general terms. We talked about Bank of the Islands versus
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Sanibel Captiva Community Bank, which I migrated from Iberia because they're like 10 times more efficient and cheaper and easier to work with.
I can bring that up during my.
Oh, okay, yeah, and fine mark and all this, because we did have that discussion.
Yeah,
All right, Commissioner Pyle, I had our phone conversation. We'll talk about it later. I just want to give a 10-second introduction. It's just that I thought it was important as chairman to really understand the mechanisms of who's doing what when it comes to the taxpayers' money. Who's, what bank accounts, how they're being held, what kind of transfers there are, how it's looked at, how the data retrieval is done. And so when I started asking the questions, I thought it'd be nice to, because, I'm new, John is new, and people are watching. So anyway, I just wanted to explain.
okay, I can bring that up in
Yeah.
my report.
Okay, so now,
So, Dick, is this sort of in line with what you think is sustainable for us?
Yes.
These are good numbers.
Yeah, relative to our budget. And I think we've, between John and Jennifer and myself and Jason Smith, our contracted CPA who does the bills. I think things are finally kind of straightened out, and we've got the accounts straightened out, and we seem to be paying our bills on time.
well, forgive me for asking, were they not straightened out prior, before you came on board? Was everything kind of scrambled eggs or?
Scrambled eggs.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so we talked about monthly revenue in the parking lot. We will talk about making the parking lot nicer for sure, because I'm with you. Item number 6, old business. Oh, Captiva Community Panel Sea Level Rise Committee proposal.
Renee, you kind of rushed into that, and I just wanted to share something while we're still in the financial discussion. I received an inquiry from a member of the public directed to me, which I just sent out via chat, and I did not respond to it. It would be an involved response, but how would we normally handle this? Should they be referred to the treasurer or the administrator, or should I invite this person to that workshop that you're planning in the next couple of weeks.
Did this question just happen right now, or is this a question?
No,
that-
I got it in advance of this meeting, but I didn't respond to it. I wanted to use this meeting financial section to get an understanding of how should I handle that question.
What's the question?
What's well,
I'll read it. I'll read it to you. I just sent it out to everybody via chat, but I'll be happy to read it to you. Somebody said they would like to understand how the general budget, the capital budget, and the audit all fit together. That is the best way to understand an organization and provide better funding understanding as well.
okay, so that's a great question, and the bottom line is, during the when the director speaks, we're gonna talk about our workshop to really explain the basics of how all of that works, and that's next Thursday with, so great question. I hope she tunes in. She or she will get more than their money's worth when it
May
comes
I
to.
ask you, is that this coming Thursday or the following Thursday?
Following, I thought it was this Thursday also, but it's the following Thursday. And
Okay,
it's a request I made.
that's the message I will pass back to this constituent, okay?
Fantastic. Thank you, Mike. Anything else?
No.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, the panel sea level rise committee proposal. Our next agenda item is regarding the presentation that was given at the workshop on Thursday by the community panels. The SLR committee, during the presentation, asked for $10,000. We said no. So let's talk about it a little bit, because a lot has come to light, and I know that I was probably the main driver, or one of the main drivers, where I was not for it, but a lot of things have come to light, and I just want to share with everyone what I felt came to light. I was always concerned with if you have a football team and the quarterback hasn't shown up yet, it's not fair to put the team strategy in front before the quarterback comes if you think the quarterback's going to arrive soon, because he might have a few tricks up his sleeve, and if we have to invest in these strategies, I think it's important to talk to the quarterback. So that was like my main thing. However, the person in charge, Ryan O'Gara, explained a lot of things that said, look, a lot of these receivables are things we're going to need, like the renderings and some of the other data, but mostly the renderings, which were very
Point of clarification, I think you mean deliverables?
deliverables. Thank you for that clarification. So because of that, and because Ryan and Sherry, look, we really need it, and I understanding that, and also the understanding that I was told by several SLR members that the scope of work can be very flexible, that if the captain says, instead of doing this, I already have it, I want you to do that. Instead, they assured me on a stack of Bibles, they will not a problem as long as it's not asking something that's way above. So there's a great flexibility in the scope of work. So as long as that's the case, I have a much different attitude and a very positive attitude about it. Knowing that it is something that they've provided, it's a service that we can all use, and so because as I said, I told you what my concern was, and now everything is dovetailing, so the timing is perfect. Apparently, Ryan O'Gara now does have, I think he said 2 or 3 people he really liked a lot, and they could all move in very quickly, and they, apparently there's, it's a non-issue now. So I just want to explain that's why.
But why should we get involved at this
Well,
time?
we're not getting involved. We are basically,
Give them money.
yeah, we're helping them
Being
out. We're
involved.
chipping in. As a government entity, we'll be taking it over. So why not prepay for some stuff?
Well, I thought, I guess the last time I thought, we were talking about Acton doing something and somebody else doing something.
Yeah.
And there was a choice between the two. So where are we from that?
Well, Aptiv is going to be doing a lot of stuff for us. And I think they were being, and I'm,
Well, they should.
yeah.
I mean, we've been working with them for years. and years.
No, I know that.
Yeah.
This is like an additional thing that the panel has put together on their own.
Then what is in the panel?
Well, they raised a lot of the money. They've raised, they're asking us for a, what, 20%, it's 35,000, we chip in 10. SCCF's chipping in, they're chipping in, privately chipping in.
So there's no more choice between Aptum and some other lady I thought was doing this? So
I think
we're not making that choice?
I think we were doing that more of as like a comparative of the
So
services.
we were asked, let me speak on
What was
this.
that?
Staff was asked by Chairman Maville prior to the last board meeting where we discussed this proposal from the community panel. We were asked to reach out to our coastal engineering firm, Acton, to get a comparison, a cost comparison on similar work that Dr. Cheryl Hapke was already doing for the
That's the other
community
lady, right?
panel. Yes, yes, sir. So we were asked to get that comparison, which we did and provided to you all. So it's not that we still don't have that choice. I mean, it's ultimately, you all's choice, your vote. So I just wanted to clarify, that's where.
So
Acton-
clarify for me, I think you folks are telling me that you like the Aptum approach. Is that correct? So we're
Well,
not gonna vote
That was
anymore.
my feeling
We're
from,
not voting on between these two people. We're
Well,
voting-
what had happened was, let me explain, Aptum was saying it would do 4 months. This lady was saying it'd be 6 months. And and then Aptum wasn't really clear on the rendering designs. So when you really evaluated the whole situation, I went back to the SLI, I said, what is this 6 to 8 months? And then they said, man, we can do it quicker. They just wanted to cover, say it a little longer. I said, so the answer to your question is, if I understand the question correctly, is by having another party that's going to be doing 99% of our work going forward for the next several years. This is an opportunity. The community has worked for 2 years for this. It's also politics involved. They want to, win a battle and lose a war. And as long as Ryan assured me that they could give us deliverables, whether it came from Aptum or from Cheryl Hapke, it would be sufficient. Figured, okay, as a chairman.
So we're
I'm
not
trying-
choosing between those two.
No, we're not choosing. We're just saying, do we want to give them a grant to do it? And I changed my mind. I was against it at first because of a timing issue, not about a quality issue. I never said one was better than the other. Although, in a way, it's interesting how Aptum comes in, tell them what they can do, and some of the other side got a little quicker. So maybe it was nice for them to get a little more reality check, say, no, it doesn't take 8 months, come on. Dick,
My concern was that we'd be paying twice for the same thing.
no, we wouldn't use
That's
Hapke.
that's
I mean, we wouldn't
what
use
I
Hapke.
was worried about. And
Yeah,
I wanted to have more assurance
right.
that the sea-level captain is going to be in charge regardless of what happened. And that's what's happened since the meeting
Yes.
now.
Sea level.
I
yes,
I
go
do
ahead.
not feel that we're paying twice.
No, we're not.
That, and as long as Ryan is comfortable, I'm comfortable with
Right.
the $10,000.
Commissioner Mullins.
Well, that was another point. It's the sea level captain that it's gonna be 5 days a week or 7 days a week, 24/7. And they have the complete staff there. It's just that they have to use outside sources and Hapke can provide those sources. So we don't need Aptum for it if we want to give chip in.
Yeah.
So that's another point. And also for all the points that I mentioned.
where will they be located?
The SCCF,
Where?
the captain, where's the captain gonna be located?
Yeah.
SCCF.
SCCF,
Yeah,
it's gonna be
the
an
office.
employee of SCCF.
Commissioner Mullins has a point for discussion as well. He has his hand raised.
Oh, yes, sir, Mr. Mullins. Commissioner
Yeah,
Mullins.
it's kind of hard to get a word in edgewise. I raised my hand here. I wanted to mention that there is not 100% overlap between these two proposals. There are some differences that are important. The Hapke proposal builds on the last 2 years of work that the panel has been doing with the community and with a lot of community involvement. And frankly, I think while there's that work that Apton can do on this down the road, which won't overlap with what these people are doing, I don't think we have the capacity in the office, given that we're going forward with the project and there's a lot of work there to be able to supervise this separate Apton one, whereas the panel will supervise the completion of Hapke and coordinate with the SCCF captain. So to me, we're not prepared to do the Apton one right now. We may want to have them do some of that work later on as a cross verification of what's being done by Hapke. So to me, I favor it, and I agree completely with what Treasurer Pyle said about the fact that it's been clear that the captain is going to be responsible for this once he's on board through the SCCF. So I think that's an important clarification. So I definitely favor going forward with this contribution towards this project.
And one more point from a hierarchy perspective. The captain is in charge. Happy is a sub that's providing some deliverables, and that's it. Pure and simple, and we're chipping in, should we go? Pure and simple. That's what everybody.
But what they want is, if they just want us to contribute.
Well,
which
they
we
first
think it
asked
is for.
Just so you know, they asked me for all of it, and I said, I'll give you 5. And then David told everyone 10,
Yeah,
and now I said, I'm not gonna, listen, I got it down from 35 to back to 10. And if he's listening, he can raise his hand just to say, yes, that's true.
So let me ask you another question. What's our baseline? Do we have any measurement of how much sea level has risen in Captiva in the last 5
That's
10
an
years?
excellent question. And,
What's our I mean, okay, so go ahead.
well, can you
So-
find out, Jennifer, if
so-
Mo Marine has anything, or?
Well, so Dr. Happy actually presented at the conference that Dan and I attended in February.
And she said there was a change?
And there is, she said within the next 10 years.
No,
we're
no, no, no,
already-
he wants to know
Past history.
how much today versus when we came here 30
Right.
years ago.
I believe she mentioned that we were already 2 feet below on the bay side, was her comment
What?
currently.
yeah,
No, what do you mean 2 feet below?
we are. Our numbers on Captiva, same as our beach.
No, wait a second.
Oh, good. Yeah.
My backyard, which is on the
I
bay.
see what you're saying. We can
is
research
her-
that and
yeah.
find out. I'll ask Dr. Happy.
I don't, well,
'Cause I have to-
you can,
I would
it's
have to look
available here.
My
Hey
notes.
Siri, how?
I would
Yeah,
have to
look,
look at.
it's that simple to find out. You call Mobley, you know, if Happy wants to tell us that.
Chairman Maville, may I have a point of order, please?
That's okay.
Our rules of procedure do have a method by which one raises their hand to be identified, and I continue to do it, and everybody's talking at cross purposes. But I want to point out that I have sat on that same Captiva Community Panel, Sea Level Rise Committee, with probably never missing a meeting for over 2 years. And one thing that is clear to me is that, the question that was raised by John Sylvia was, what is our baseline? And then we got into a lot of other cross discussion. The fact is, one of the things they're doing is purchasing from another organization a tidal monitor that will be placed somewhere, either in Blind Pass or Redfish Pass, to establish the baseline as of when that goes in place. It apparently is similar to NOAA, but off by some hours, but it'll be able to be coordinated there. And that baseline will become the base in which we're going to go forward and do measurements periodically. So the baseline will in fact be there, and the tidal monitor, which they're buying out of their funds, is going to help establish the baseline.
But Mike, John's question was. how much-
Baseline.
Yeah, but the baseline now or 10 years
What was
ago?
it
and how
10
much-
years ago?
Yeah, well, he wanted to know
Well, we
where.
also had the LiDAR that was flown, and which, again, those that attended the Captiva Community Panel public meetings, she had a baseline of LiDAR baseline that actually, I think, went back to 2004. Now, I have since asked them to take a hard look at that and see whether they shouldn't get more recently flown LiDAR, so we have a more current baseline and see what the difference is between the two.
The metric is attainable because there were measurements in 2004. But the bottom line is, we don't know. But
Well,
we
hold
can-
on, there's more to it. That we joined as members of a group called the Regional Compact, the Southwest Florida Regional Compact, that FGCU and Lee County and Sanibel and a number of local municipalities are partners in. Lee County just came on board. We came on the end of last year. That group is also flying LiDAR for various areas, including Captiva and Sanibel. And so they will have a baseline that would be current as of probably 2021. So we can compare these different numbers to see how close they are. But my feeling is that the LiDAR flies it, and it does establish sea level at certain tides and certain times a year. So there will be a solid baseline there in addition to this monitor that's being acquired by the Captiva Community Panel. So John, I don't know if that helps answer your question.
I think going forward, that's the answer. I was trying to figure out, okay, do we have something from 5 or 10 years ago to tell us how much sea level rise have we really experienced in Captiva for the last 10 years. That's my
Yeah, and
basic.
again, the LiDAR that's being flown more recently can be compared to the LiDAR that was flown back in 2004 and 2010. So we do in fact have established LiDAR that was flown by NOAA at several points in the past. So when you do a current one, you can compare them and see how much sea level rise has occurred. Absolutely.
Steve Buttel in the county probably has information that goes further back. And the point is that it's a great question. Let's find out what the benchmarks were, or
Well, the answer is obvious. Steve Buttel will tell you the same thing that we do, and that he looks at the NOAA data, which has
Right.
been LiDAR flown in the region, and then we can get a current version of it. And similarly, Aptum was involved in a project down in Collier County where NOAA flew it for them relative to similar types of monitoring that they're doing. So there's a lot of data out there. It's just that one of these studies is going to have to start to correlate them and say, here's what our baseline point is, if you will.
Well, the reason I keep asking, well, not keep, but it'd be nice if we could go way back, like in the 80s or 70s. The reason I say that is having a bay property, I've seen a little bit of encroachment of the water. It seems like the vegetation patterns are changing. It's more so. If someone would have asked me, how much do you think it's risen in 30 years? And I had to say, I would probably say a couple of inches, 3 inches, which in my opinion is a lot, but.
Well, Renee, we can ask your captain when he gets on board to study this data and try to give us some of a sense of that. But I will say to you that when I first became chairman of this district over 10 years ago, I hired a local reporter to go into the archives and pull out, and they should be in the files of the CEPD, either in the office or in storage, every article that was written concerning the CEPD in the local papers, which was then the Captiva Current and the Islander and so on. And they were reports in the 1980s discussing the same subject of sea level rise on Captiva. And there were also reports somewhere along the line about the opposite. But in any event, there is history there, and NOAA has a lot of history, as does NASA. So you should put it to the captain to say, let us show what the progression has been, because I think that's important.
That suggestion, that's absolutely perfect, and that's what the captain's for, so we don't have to stress over it and get a real answer. Okay, so can we go? All right, so do we have a motion to chip in for the $10,000 to go to their $34,400, which will be provided by the CEPD? And this conversation, as you know, was tabled at the last meeting. We promised we would readdress it.
I'd like to make that motion.
All right, Dick. Is there a
I
second?
will second the motion.
And is there any more discussion? Okay, so let's call the vote.
Okay, Vice Chairman Sylvia,
Yes.
Treasurer Pyle,
Yes.
Secretary Kaiser,
Yes.
Commissioner Mullins,
Aye.
and Chairman Seville.
Yes,
The motion passes unanimously.
there we go. Happy end.
Now that's for $10,000.
You know I got that. But it came
Could-
with those. Not at all.
With all due respect, I didn't hear some of it, but did the motion pass unanimously? Is that what I heard? Okay,
sir.
Thank you.
So Renee, I don't know how you want to proceed, but I really would like to get a follow-up in terms of what was actually done before with TEL or whatever it is to establish.
Oh,
a
yeah.
baseline.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the sea level captain, he can put together something good. Yeah. This is something.
The reason I ask
Yeah.
is that I can remember Hapke's, and she had like 1 foot, 2 foot,
Yeah,
4 foot.
projections.
And I'm trying to figure out, okay, what do we really experience? Because
Right.
is 2 foot relevant, not enough,
I
too
think
much?
it's been this much. One of the
Yeah.
truth. I mean, I've
Well-
had my property for 20 years in the back.
For the other thing that's interesting is that they changed the floodplain
That's
on
right.
the bay side a few years ago and took it out of the floodplain.
Right.
And people immediately rushed in and built houses right on the ground because they didn't have to.
Well, some
Build a
did.
box.
Well, there were a few people in this area that had that floodplain. But the thing to think about is if you remember when she made her presentation, in the front, it showed the back that it was going to get flooded out after 2 or 3 feet. But in the front, it almost didn't change because for the past 35 years, we built out 12 or 13 feet. So it really makes a statement we have to maintain our island, not just our front side, but our back side. Anyway, okay, so moving on, congratulations to the panel.
Sorry, I just wanted to identify
Yeah.
that you want an action item on getting these baselines.
Yeah, getting that baseline information, so we
Yeah.
can really, because even when Aptiv or HAPKey come back with something, if they were to say, well, if it's 2 feet, this is what's gonna happen, and then we can say, well, since 2004 to 2020, it's actually gone up 6 inches.
Right.
So 2 feet's not relevant.
So we
Right.
should,
Let's
we
be-
should probably have the engineers look at that for us, because we're not necessarily
Well, Mike,
qualified to make that.
no, you're not just, all we're asking is go out and get the answers.
Right.
You don't have to, and you get the answers by calling Patel
Yeah, I have
and
some
make
guidance
it a
on
scope of
Okay.
work
Yeah, I just
from
wanted to make sure that we had.
We'll talk about
the
it.
sea level captain, and we tell O'Gara, say, by the way, when you hire him, this is something we need to know.
Right.
We're all part of it. We have skin in the game. We get to ask.
So,
Could
just
I
want to
just
also-
ask Daniel, what do you think about this whole discussion? In terms of, do you think you can get, I would look to you to get the answers to this question.
Yeah, you're the mapping guy, right?
Yeah, he's the
He
man.
knows where to go.
I just wanna-
Your job, period.
Just want a definition of the deliverable you want.
He'll take care of it. That's what I like to hear. He's military, done. That's what I want to hear. It's a photographer, the world's worst assistants were the guys that went to college. And the best guys I ever had were from the military. I'd be in the middle of a shooting, you have the hair and the makeup and the client, give me the 180 to 200. That's it. You're putting film in against, give me the lens, and I'm, oh, darling, you look fabulous, give me the lens. And, but the military guys, he said, no, use the 105, it's better. I said, Jesus, right. I'm sorry, it was just, yes, okay. Humor is.
Humor is good.
Humor
We
is
love
good.
humor.
All right, so let's move on, and we're gonna go to, our first item in new business is regarding the daily maintenance of the portable bathrooms at Allison Hagroff Beach Park. Administration has compiled comparative bids for the service. Staff, do you have any comments regarding
Yes.
the bathroom?
We do. As you recall, I believe a month and a half ago or so, I sent out an email from,
Oh, excuse me, one more thing. For the amount of money we're charging hourly, there should be a toiletry guide with colognes to choose from. Okay,
Well,
please continue.
okay. So I was asked by a chairman to research a company that could come out 7 days a week, who actually could come out 7 days a week. And I was able to find our contact, Robin, formerly from Garden Street, who absolutely did a quote for us, but it was very expensive. It was over $7,000 a month to service. And the reason is because in order for the island of Captiva, where we are located, to be able to get 7 day a week service, the trucks have to be in and out off the island before 8 a.m. Otherwise, the parking lot gets so full, traffic is bad, yes, but the parking lot gets full, the truck can't appropriately get in there to service because, as I believe you said, Mr. Kaiser, earlier, the parking lot's been jam-packed pretty much since March.
Question,
Yes.
forgive me. John and I had that discussion. And what they do is they have what is called the honey dipper. Small honey dipper comes in, and believe me, the truck does not go 2 feet away from the toilet. It has a hose. So even if there's a car in front of the hose, why can't they just get an extra long tube? So regardless if they get there at 9 or 10, I couldn't understand the difference. And John's answer was, he says it made sense, but maybe there's a liability thing that the tube touches the car and they want to sue.
As someone who was formerly involved in logistics in my previous career, I understand the logic regarding being on and off the island prior to 8 a.m. That was the problem our previous vendor had, is they could never service the restrooms, and oftentimes they would leave. Maybe they didn't have an apparatus like you're speaking of a tube. But that's why our restroom, even though they were contracted to perform 7 days a week service, it didn't get done. So based on that, I sent out the email to say, $7,000 a month would be our monthly charge. And so we made the decision based on approval from our treasurer, and I believe you commented, Chairman Reveal. What I did not realize at the time is that we weren't authorized to make that decision.
Right.
Because if you take versus if you take the monthly cost versus putting it out over 12 months, that's a sizable contract.
That's right.
So it needed a vote. So my staff reached out to 2 other vendors, and I'll let John give a report in terms of what he discovered with the 2 other bids that we received.
All right, great. And before John, just when are the latrines serviced on the causeway?
That I don't know.
They actually have Allied portables, and they're very unhappy with their service. Our last people, they
LA.
have the same issue, but they have to stick with it because it was a public bid, and they're
I
stuck with
got
their
you.
contract.
Okay, good. So what do you got?
So neither Blue Slate Solutions or United Site Solutions, which were the 2 bids that came back for us, can guarantee arrival prior to 8 a.m. or servicing 7 days a week due to manpower issues. They don't have the staff, and they won't guarantee that they'll be out here 7 days a week. Even though that's what they put in their quote, because I asked them to tell us what that would cost regardless.
And
They
could
still
you-
said they wouldn't be
And
able to.
could you explain to me why they have to be off the island at 8? Because a car might block them?
Well, it's just the traffic, the amount of traffic. Those trucks are very large.
Yeah,
And from a safety standpoint and efficiency standpoint, you want to be out in and off the island and not
Sure.
around a lot of people when that truck comes in and out of our parking lot. There's not a lot of room in there to turn around a truck like that, so it's very important, which is why the vendor we're currently using said she would have to hire a driver specific to our route, and that would be the only route that individual did every day.
How many times a week do they come now?
Currently, they come 7 days a week, and we're able to track that because she provides her GPS reports to us, and they're always there before 8 a.m.
So
So
what's wrong with that?
the problem is the
$7,000 a month.
cost. So
Oh,
we
we're paying
can't.
$7,000 a
Yes,
month
sir.
now.
Yes, sir. So we need to make a decision. You all need to make a decision if you want to stick with the service we have or try one of the less expensive services in hopes that we'll get the same level of service. That's the
which
decision.
they are not guaranteeing.
But I still don't understand, when you drive the truck in the middle, they take out the hose, they do what they need to do. The hose goes back in. And these trucks are not the giant honey dipper trucks, they're usually smaller. Because I've had them on my construction sites, and they're, you know. So what I don't understand is if the parking lot attendant is there at the same time, and they're in talks with each other, he can be there 20 minutes before.
He's not there at 6 a.m. when they're usually here with the truck now.
So, yeah, the truck now, but the people that, why is it they can't get, did they say why they couldn't guarantee?
They don't have the manpower.
Just the manpower,
They won't
that's it?
put out drivers that often, no.
You see all the problems that Cape Coral's having with their refuse pickup? I mean, all because of manpower.
It's a workforce development issue, yes, sir.
Oh,
Most definitely, because the issue that the stimulus has created, as well as the unemployment, a lot of the CDL drivers are not wanting to.
They don't want to.
Correct. So everybody's competing for that type of work.
Yeah.
And Mr. Pyle, let me ask you the budget question. So I'm looking at this meter revenue, and we made 560,000 on parking revenues. If we spend 7 times 12? 84,000 on the bathroom. What are your thoughts there? Is that
I
just an
think
expense or is it an investment on getting?
Well, I think we have to maintain the quality of the facilities there. And I would gladly spend $7,000 a month to get $90,000 of revenue.
But I don't think there's a correlation there. I think one also has to examine the fact that 20% of the revenue is now going to that, when that could go to more, what it's supposed to, to take care of the sand, the beach renourishment, take care of administration, to help the
Yeah, but
SECF with
if
turtle
you've got,
monitoring.
let's say we can get it for 3,500, what was the other bid? 4,000?
It was 2,200.
Commissioner Mullins has raised his hand for this question as well, just so you.
All right, go ahead, thank you for letting us know. Mike, let him chime in.
Yeah, I wanted to say that we should not look at a monolithic solution, meaning a solution that fits every month. In these periods of time where we have unduly high traffic, perhaps we need the person as often as he's coming, and 7,000 may not be outrageous, or certainly every day may not be outrageous. I don't know what the price should be. And then there are times of the year where it's lower. So I think we need to be able to structure it so that it varies based upon the degree of volume of visitors to the parking lot. Now, how we do that, we have to figure out, but it should be a variable and not a fixed monthly number.
I would agree with that, Mike, because there are times that parking lots are empty during the rainy season. And right now, you can't get near them.
But our summer revenue,
We have been getting a lot busier.
yeah, our summer
Yeah, no,
revenue is
I-
not that far off from what our winter revenue is.
I don't understand.
To my understanding, recently I had a conversation with Daniel, and he obtained information from Lee County relative to the number of people coming through the toll booth. And we talked about the possibility of correlating that data. He did some data mining and correlating the data from the county of who comes over the causeway to the parking tickets that we have to try to create a model that shows peak season and slower season and so on. So it's possible to design this based upon that kind of data to have more coverage in high peak periods and less coverage in other periods. Daniel, if you're there, maybe you want to speak to that data mining that we talked about.
Yes, that data was actually attributed to cell phone pings on the island. Although it was actual island-wide cell phone pings, I believe in this situation, maybe the parking lot sales would be more specific to the parking lot and the availability of the parking lot.
So John, let me ask you a question then, with respect to dealing with a contractor. This company that comes 7 days a week, are they going to accept a contract for 6 months of the year and then give 6 months of the year to United, the Blue Site, to come 5 days a week? How's that going to work?
Well, we could just scale back their service. We could ask them to scale back their service and give us a quote for that. If that's what happens in the non-busy time, that our parking lot, I'll have to look at the data from, well, probably from 2019 to get a better idea. But we could always ask our current vendor if they would scale back during the summer months.
Okay, so so you're going to ask them
We
to
could.
scale back in
Mhm.
the summer months, although last year's kind of difficult to figure out. But
Right, that's why I think I'll look at 2019 numbers to see how we're trending, 2021 versus 2019, because I think it'll give us a better picture.
So we did have increased.
If I may come back to the point with Daniel, this is not magic to be able to have devices that will go out there and count the people coming over the blind pass bridge or whatever. In other words, having some entity give us a marketing projection of how busy we are at different points of the year. I do know that we've had the economists in the past, when they do their recreational studies, they've done some surveys on the beach. They tend to project based on bed taxes and other things, what the highs and lows are of the year. So I don't want to try to solve it on this phone conversation, but it is definitely possible to be able to predict the times when we're going to be busier and times when we're going to be less busy. And then my feeling is we only do a contract with a company, and I think any of them would do it, where we pay them more for when they're going to have to make more visits and less when they're making less visits. And I think that should be doable.
I was focused on the supply side. Yeah, you can track the number of people coming in, I got it. But then when I'm going to ask the contractor to do 7 months of 7 days a week and then 5 months of 5 days a week, how's that contractor going to treat that in terms of pricing?
Oh, I don't think any of them would have an issue with that. They'll
And that's
just
good.
lower the price accordingly.
Then let's try to work with that.
They usually have a day rate. So like on the contract, they work it out by day and then how many times they have to come visit. So I imagine it'd just be the rate minus.
Because I'm looking at Dick's numbers and I'm thinking, for at least February and March, you've got to have 7 days a week,
Yeah, absolutely.
because these people are paying for it and I don't want a bathroom
Well,
mess.
you look at June and July, like the summer months, actually had as much or more revenue as January, February.
Mhm.
And just as a point that even before we had these guys in place just 2 months ago, when we put them in, we were regularly getting customer complaints about the condition of the bathrooms, right, every month.
But now we don't get that
We
anymore?
don't.
No. What does the town do Lee County with, by the, the toll booths.
Oh, the Causeway, they have
Yeah.
Allied Portables, which was gotten through a public bid, and they can't get rid of them. They're very displeased with their service with Allied Portables as well. That's who we had prior to this.
Yeah.
Because they
don't have
are
septic
notorious for,
fields?
they're notorious for undercutting the bids in the industry, and then they underdeliver as well.
And there's no way that we can get water in a septic field or a waste
Yeah.
treatment?
We'll discuss that.
We're gonna discuss that
Okay,
next.
because that's really, for that kind of money, you'd have the whole center and everything, all in.
So Dan, you're gonna look at some numbers for us,
Oh, he's gonna talk
go
about
by
that.
months, and then
Okay,
we can
so what do
talk
we
about the
do?
contractors.
We have to make a
That'll-
decision on what we do with the,
I believe,
I would like to table that until we hear Daniel's discussion on what the plans are, or what we can and cannot do for that.
well, okay, hang on. Dan wanted to bring up a good point about during the project. Go ahead.
So during the project, we know is coming up, we're not sure when because the bids haven't been opened yet, but Allison Haggard parking lot's gonna be closed for a certain period of time. So that's also something to take into consideration, that we can reduce the service on the parking lot for the months that it's closed. Because it's not gonna be used as often, if at all, outside the contractors.
Right, and so to your point, Chairman Bedell, when you're talking about you'd rather table this, well, we can't really table it, we have to service daily.
Right.
So what I'm hearing Vice Chair Sylvia say, and correct me if I'm wrong, sir, is you're saying, let's keep the current vendor and let's get them to scale back on the months when we aren't as busy, or,
Based upon Dan's data.
there you go. Dan's data, as well as when the beach renourishment project will take place. By next Thursday, we will have a better idea of our
I
timeline.
can support that.
And the other two people that bid said, well, let's see their bid. Can you scroll it?
This is also page 19 in your,
So they're
Materials
saying
package.
it's 2,000 a month.
this one is 2,000, and the other one, right down here, blue site, is saying,
And that's saying if they come every day, it's $2,000 or $3,000.
Yep.
So how does the other, so,
If it's too good to be
because
true, it's
the other company,
there's something not right.
The other company
whenever I build buildings, I have to get the porta potties. I know what it costs. And
Yes.
it's 7,000's off the charts.
the other company, they, Green Street, formerly Green Street, they specifically hired a dedicated driver for
Well,
this
we know
route.
why they're doing it.
Yeah.
That's not the point. The point is, these people are saying, okay, they're gonna put in the sanitizer, the delivery of dropping it. The porta potty, oh, they bring in their own porta potties.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so that's one-time charge. But anyway,
And they're also not promising 7 day a week. They have it in
what
their
are they
quote.
promising?
They have it in their quote for 7 days a week, but they said they cannot promise 7 days a week. Normally, they would
What
do
did-
3.
3. They said
Wow.
at best, oh, well, that's different. But if they were to come 7 times a week, it would be $3,000.
Yes, sir.
And if they don't come,
That's not promised.
Jesus, talk about being painted in.
May I make a point of order, by the way?
Go ahead.
There have been a couple of chats, and I'm not sure who is actually responsible for monitoring chats, but Mike Campbell from Lee County had put a chat in there about the issue of LiDAR. I don't want to get into that now, but he's also now said that audio is not coming through on Zoom for the participant, not for the participants, but for the public. Somebody,
Signals do not get returned over. We know that, but it shows where the land is. And if the land changes, then we know the water is crept up. I mean, that's kind of.
Renee, I'm not sure if you heard me just then. Did you hear what I said, or are you not hearing me?
It's working fine for me. Audio's not working on Zoom for Mr. Campbell, so,
And that's
Yeah.
got to be with their own personal settings.
yeah. Tell them to touch buttons. You know,
So where are we
I'm
on this,
muted.
Jennifer?
So then if that's what I'm hearing, then I just need you guys to vote, to make a motion and a second and vote on it. If we're going,
But what are we voting on?
you're
is my point.
motioning to keep the current vendor with the caveat or the additional, the follow-up is to get the bid for less service per week in our slower months, and also when we're having the beach renourishment project.
And the slower months to be determined by
Based on-
Daniel suggesting to the committee,
Correct.
the commission.
We have no choice. We get a gun to our head. The only thing I keep asking, what happens when there is manpower? And I never heard of a truck so large that it can't fit in there. That's BS. They got two.
They blame COVID-19 on, it's in the paper today. Was having a Cape Coral. It's
So-
awful.
Can I make a motion, basically paraphrasing what Jennifer said, that we
Make sure
keep
that the
the,
motion is-
Yes.
that we keep the current contract and that Daniel will take a look at the numbers and we can inform the contractor that during the 4 or 5 months that Daniel identifies as slow months, we will cut back on the contract.
Service, correct.
Aren't we actually ratifying,
We have
The
to
selection,
You have to make. a second
ratifying
reading of
the
this.
selection of these people? Because they're already
Approved.
doing it.
Yeah.
And it should have been approved before they started. So
Correct.
all we're doing is ratifying.
So we're ratifying.
I want to know what we're ratifying. Are they under a term or is it just month to month or what is it?
We didn't do a sign a contract. We just have a month to month with them.
Okay. So just keep it going and still got a gun to our head. There's got to be alternatives.
So do we need to
They
vote on
can't,
it?
they can't sharpen their pencil a little
So
bit?
who's
So,
gonna second your
Mr.
motion?
Sylvia made the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Vote, Vice Chairman Sylvia,
Approved.
Treasurer Pyle,
Approved.
Secretary Kaiser,
Approved.
Commissioner Mullins. Commissioner Mullins,
He dropped off.
I'm here. I'm just fading in and out on the audio, as mentioned earlier.
okay, you're having trouble hearing us as well now?
No, I hear you now, but you weren't hearing me, obviously. So I said approved.
Okay, thank you. And Chairman McGill.
Approved.
Motion passes unanimously.
May I just also add that we're not supposed to be doing projects with this level of expenditure without contracts, so we ought to really get contracts in for all the services that are being provided by us. That's been pretty much a standard procedure that we should follow, that is not always followed.
Let's get some paper
We
between.
can do
the
that,
two of
add
us.
that to our action item list.
Okay. Now that we've gone through that. Okay, our next item is in the new business or proposed changes to the rules of procedure. Rule number 4.05, Commissioners' interaction with staff. A resolution of the Captiva Erosion Prevention District approving rule of procedure 4.05, providing procedure for commissioner communication with staff and executive director and providing an effective date.
So I brought this, let me just give the
Don't wanna
background.
hear
I
it.
brought this forward.
You don't want us asking questions?
Well, yeah,
Well, I
you're
want
welcome
to
to ask
understand
questions.
what it is. I have no
But,
clue.
so I brought this forward. I created an SOP with the help of Ralph Brooks, our attorney. One of the things that's been a little challenging for me since I started is being able to manage the requests of my staff. Oftentimes, requests will be made of my staff and I'm not aware of it. So I wrote an SOP that would prefer communication interaction with CEPD staff would be that you are welcome to reach out to CEPD staff at any time. I'd prefer it be via email and a carbon copy to me so that way I'm able to hold them accountable for information that you're asking me for.
So what's the big deal?
I just want to make that an SOP so that everybody's clear on
Well,
that.
are we allowed to stop in the office?
You absolutely are.
All right.
Yes.
Because we used to when before this corona virus, and we used to really have some pretty good chats.
I have no problem with that. Send
Okay.
you an email. and
Yeah,
then
send an email or.
I'll just send you an email and say, you figure out who can answer the
That's
question.
fine. Either way, I just want to be aware if you're asking my team to do anything so that I'm able to hold them accountable on what you're asking them. So Mr. Kaiser, for example, if you come to the office,
Right.
I'm not there and you direct John to do
John.
something, I just
Right.
need you to let me know,
Okay.
okay?
Okay.
Is it possible that one, it's a question, it's a governmental question. With my staff, I have about 20 employees at the Franklin shops in downtown Fort Myers. And to alleviate potential pandemonium. They're all in a WhatsApp. So if someone has a question like, hey, the lady left the brown bag, is that in aisle 7? You know, everyone knows, or can someone switch with me? They all talk to each other via WhatsApp. Is that something we can incorporate with, without?
We can.
We do have that.
Not under the sunshine law.
Not if you're just asking the
Like,
staff.
okay,
If that's the
You're
question.
asking the staff.
Yeah, I can't say, hey, Dick, you want to vote on this?
Well, it would be easier to track.
But I
the
can
email.
say, hey, Jennifer, what's the story on the porta potties? What color are they gonna be? And then everyone gets to see the question. I think that way the communication is one.
I would be a little leery introducing another mode of communication. I feel that with this group, email and the telephone is the best way.
No, WhatsApp is the best way.
Well,
That's a good.
I feel a little nervous about implementing that at
Right,
this time. I
okay,
think for now, if we can just commit to communicating via email, or if you do communicate in person,
Oh.
just give me a heads up, that's
Right.
all.
I'd like to see all the commissioners copied in some way that if one of the commissioners is interacting with the staff, I think every commissioner should know what's happening.
Right.
And that's part of the interpretation of the sunshine law,
Right,
because we're not supposed to be talking to each other.
correct.
Well, we can't.
no, not talking about each other's, anything that has to do with a vote I mean, I can say, hey, Harry, how long have you been on the board? Or I can say, hey, Harry, what was so-and-so's, of course you can say that, but I can't say, Harry, about that vote next week, where you stand on that.
Well, what about Harry? What about asking Harry individually what he thinks of the contract for porta potties without?
Yeah, this is Ralph. You're not allowed to do that, only at a sunshine and
Right.
advertised meeting.
Yeah. Okay. so
Mr.
Ralph-
Chairman, point of clarification here. I've been raising my hand and you guys choose to not use decorum pursuant to our rules of procedure, but in any event, the resolution that's posted, I cannot read more than the first sentence under Commissioners' interaction with staff. Is that not presented properly on the screen? Thank you, please. So I can read what's being said here.
This was also sent out in your packet in the meeting notice.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any more public, any more?
I have further conversation, which is that there already is a rule of procedure that said when commissioners reach out to administration at any level, the priorities of what gets dealt with are decided by the chairman. So relative to this, if we all reach out to staff and we copy Jennifer, I also think that staff should be trained to, when they get a request, to pass it upstairs. And I'm very happy to copy, and I typically do, but I think staff should know better than to start working on something without bringing it up to their superior. But then the other thing is that if there are multiple requests coming in, the chairman gets to decide the priority if there's any conflict of things. And that's something that should be discussed between the chairman and the administrator. And that's already in our rules of procedure.
Yes. It just takes it a step further and just verifies that you guys are committing to communicate to me.
And the word is shall.
Shall.
And I'm fine with that, but I do have a question of the attorney as well.
Shall carbon copy the executive director
Got it.
so that the executive director is able to manage the performance.
There you go.
Shall.
Ralph,
it's in
I
the-
believe Commissioner Mullins has a question for you.
My
Okay.
understanding, and I don't have the rules open in front of me, but my understanding is that in the past, when we've changed rules of procedure, that there's something in there that says you have to publish this a period of time to make changes. It requires a certain percentage of votes from the commissioner. I'm just wondering, can this be brought up in a single meeting like this, or should it be done X period of time in advance? And that somehow it spells that out in the rules, and I'm not looking at them right now. But do you know what the rule is on that?
I'll have to research that. I'm actually in the car driving and I can't look at them right now. I don't have them with me.
Jennifer, did you look at that before you made this suggestion?
Yes, I looked at it and it wasn't as clear. Go ahead, John. Sorry.
Section 9, Rule 901, amendments, manner, and time, secretary or chairman shall review this code and recommend changes. This code shall be amended by a majority vote of the district. All proposed amendments shall be voted on at a regular board meeting or a special board meeting called for that purpose. Notice of the amendment will be placed on the agenda. That's it.
Okay, so it meets the requirement.
Yes.
That's good. Thank you. I
That
knew-
sounds like it meets that requirement, yes.
Very good.
So basically, we send the request to you and you figure out who's gonna do it.
Or you send it to my team and CC me. Either
I'll
way,
send it to you.
that's fine.
All right. so
The only thing this rule requires is that if you do send a request to staff, that you CC the manager, the administrator.
Who's the administrator? It's you. Yeah, I just send it to you.
Jennifer.
Yes.
So if you CC John, if you ask John to do something, you CC Jennifer on that email. So she can know what's being asked of her staff.
But not commissioners.
I see nothing onerous in the request, so I'm happy to comply.
It's hard when you do, because when you include other commissioners, like, you would always say, or you should always say, please do not reply all to this email. Like, you shouldn't be talking to the other commissioners if it's gonna be something, an issue that you need us to research that you could potentially be voting on in the future. It's just safer that way.
I'm confused now by what you just said. You're saying Dick was asking that we reply all on everything or that we include everybody. And you just said the opposite, if I got it right?
Yeah, I mean.
Well, I think what Jennifer's saying is the danger with including everybody on there is that someone hits reply all. So two commissioners are not allowed to talk to each other by email on any official business of CEPD. So what most local governments do is put on a disclaimer that says this email is being provided for informational purposes only. Please do not hit reply to all, because if you hit reply to all, now all of a sudden there's a potential sunshine law violation.
Yeah, with all due respect, Ralph and Jennifer, I don't read the sunshine law that way. And in the past with the.
No, I know we've talked about it, but I
please
take a
finish my
conservative view of
Can
it.
I please finish my sentence? I'm trying to talk. I don't need to be interrupted all the time. My understanding is I put on every one of my emails, commissioners should be admonished not to enter into a dialogue or whatever, and that we all need to learn not to dialogue on an issue, but we can share the information as per what Commissioner Pyle requested. So I think that not letting people know what's going on or back and forth is more harmful than I think we should take the risk and put something on there that warns everybody, please don't enter into a dialogue. But there's nothing that says that we cannot share information with every other commissioner as long as we don't dialogue back and forth about it prior to a public meeting. So we need to get
That's
this
all.
point clarified.
That's correct. As long as you don't reply, there's no sunshine violation. So you can put a notice on there, do not reply to this message if you're a commissioner.
Okay, are any of you familiar with the notice that I always put on my thing about commissioners should not enter into a dialogue in response to? I mean, there's something there that we can put in that everybody understands to be clear about not violating sunshine law.
And we can share that, Mike, with all the commissioners.
So,
Actually.
so we don't need, do we need a motion? We still need to vote on it.
Yes.
Okay, so is
You need to
it,
call the vote.
As the
You've already got your motion, you've already got,
no more discussion? Good.
Who made the motion?
motion to accept the resolution as written.
It was motion.
Yeah,
May I ask who made the motion, please?
Mr. Pyle, did you make the motion?
I think so.
Yeah.
I
that's what
think so
thought.
too.
Okay, and who's the second?
Need a second.
Okay, but just to remind you, our rules of procedure give the privilege of calling the vote to the commissioner making the motion. So whoever made the motion can call the vote and end the discussion and call the vote at any time.
Oh, I second it.
Call the
But whoever made the motion can call the vote.
Vice Chair Sylvia,
Yes.
Treasurer Pyle,
yes.
Secretary Kaiser,
Yes,
Commissioner Mullins,
Yes,
Chairman Lavelle.
Yes.
Resolution passes unanimously.
Okay, moving on. Yeah. Anyone have their hand up? Mike, your hand is still up.
I'll take it down.
Administrative report.
no, wait, we have another
Wait a minute.
one.
Oh, and,
Another resolution.
oh, there's two?
Yeah, there's Roman numeral 2.
Oh, excuse me, all right. Change from 1967 to the most updated version of Robert's Rules of Order. A resolution of the Captiva Erosion Prevention District approving update to Robert's Rules of Order, current edition, and providing an effective date.
So what we wanted to do we wanted to make sure that we had the most current version of Robert's Rules of Order. While we were in procedural changes, I asked John to research that. And so this resolution just allows us to make that change, to update.
Okay.
So we need a
I
motion
need
in
to,
this.
yeah, is there a motion, please?
Is this a motion to accept?
Yeah, the current rules.
I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second the motion.
All right, you get to,
I'll call
Call
a
for
vote.
discussion, please.
call for discussion. Does anyone want to say anything?
Yeah, I do. I think this is too vague, saying the most current government edition of Robert's Rule. I think you should put the most current one in there, and it doesn't change that often, but to leave it that vague means everybody's got to be reading Robert's Rules all the time to know what, I think that should very specifically say then 2020 edition or whatever it is, but just most current is really too vague and impossible to manage.
Okay, why don't we just change to the 2020 edition?
Well, I don't know when the most current version is. Do you know, Jennifer?
Well, it's the most current version.
It doesn't say that an actual.
Ralph.
I think I recently bought the 2020 version about a month and a half ago. I
Okay,
think that's still the most current version. You can buy a PDF online.
2020 it is, or 22.
So we will amend the resolution. Is the
Yeah.
motion maker okay with that amendment to the resolution?
So amended.
Okay,
And
is
so
the
amended.
second-
Now, again, if we're going to follow Robert's Rules of Order, then when you change a motion, you literally either have to vote on the amendment or to withdraw the motion and start all over again. So if we're talking about using Robert's Rules of Order, that's what Robert's Rules calls.
About that. Jennifer just said at city council, there's other ways, there's quicker ways,
Well,
so.
we can, that is a way, we can certainly do that. We've also amended motions to add additional information if need be. So if the motion maker would like to withdraw the current motion and the second's okay with it, we can redo the motion.
So let's redo the motion.
Okay,
And
Just
my
say-
motion is to accept the 2021 version of Robert Rules.
2020,
2020 is what we were just told.
2020 said.
Okay, done deal.
So you want to remake that motion, whoever made it?
I did.
yes, the motion,
But
Mike did the second,
I'll second it again.
Seconded it.
yes.
I'll second it.
The vote, okay.
Thank you.
Vice Chair,
Yes.
Treasurer Pyle,
Yes.
Secretary Kaiser,
Yes,
Commissioner Mullins,
Yes,
and Chairman Maville.
Yes. Okay,
And the motion passes.
sorry, it passes unanimously. Administrative report. We will now move on the administrative report, Executive Director. The
Thank
soapbox
you.
is yours.
So I'm going to add two things that we had mentioned earlier. One of the things that Chairman Maville and I spoke about last week was possibly look at shopping around for our bank services. I know that we currently use Bank of the Islands, which is part of Edison Bank, but Chairman Maville asked me how I felt about possibly looking around, and I said, I think it's a good idea. The reason I think is because as we're moving into the 21st century and starting to make payments online, I think that there are banks that have probably a faster and more efficient system than the current system that we're using. I don't think it would hurt for us to shop around and meet with other banks and see if they'd be willing to take our accounts. But I wanted to get some direction from you all to see if that's a direction you want us to go.
can you hear me? This is Commissioner Mullins.
I don't see your hand up, Mike. Put your hand up, put your hand up.
I'm not going to be the only one doing it, Renee. Seriously, can you hear me? I can't tell if you're hearing me or
You
not.
sound great, Mike. We can hear you.
Okay, I just wanted to say that I completely agree with the spirit of what Chairman Maville is proposing, but I think there's so much work to do and there's so many areas. I'll bring some of them out in this administrative report where we're behind or we're not consistent in how we're running certain things, that I think that just adds one more pile of work for the staff to do that doesn't add enough extra value yet. Maybe in 6 months after the project is started and so on, things will slow down. We can look into that. But at the present time, I think it's an unnecessary change. I don't know if the treasurer feels differently. How does the treasurer feel about it?
I would agree with you. We actually have 3 relationships. One is the Sanibel Captiva Bank with the CD that was put there at a competitive rate. We also have the Bank of the Islands where we have our checking account. And right now the checking account is large because pretty soon we're going to start, this money's going to start going in the opposite direction. And then we also have a relationship with Fifth Third Bank, which is where we have been buying treasury bills with the cash. At this point, the treasury bills aren't paying anything, literally aren't paying anything. So I would think we could take this on after we get our major project done. But to change banks just as we're looking for somebody to help us underwrite the $18 million worth of bonds doesn't make a lot of sense.
So now my point.
I agree with that too.
Yeah.
because-
Okay, no, I agree too, but I deal with a lot of banks too. And I know that not quite the same amount, but I would say about 50 times more transactions one of my companies does than the CEPD does. And I got to tell you, the mobile banking apps that they have at Sandcat Bank are just phenomenal. The time, the incredible, the integration between the QuickBooks programs that we have, the AHS sending and everything, it's just night and day. And I'm not so sure that the other, especially if you're going to be writing a lot of checks, it's something to think about. You know, in the old days, Dick, as you know, when a person gave an order to buy a stock, they had to walk into the cage. Remember that? Walking into the cage?
Yeah, my
And
grandfather
then-
used to do that.
Yeah, see, there you go. And then they even did it in the 90s, early 90s. And then lo and behold, a few of the, like a new company called Charles Schwab, they went, you know, when you touch a few keys on the keyboard, you didn't have to walk into the cage. So what I'm trying to say is the idea was not to switch, but to look into it, have some conversations. Item number 2, Fifth Third. Why would we want to be with Fifth Third?
Because
Well,
they're,
let me finish.
no,
Go ahead.
the reason we are is because they did our last bond.
Yeah, I
issue.
know. Who do you think organized Fifth Third 15 years ago? I did. I brought them to the table. I know them intimately.
Right.
And all they do now is now they have a new team. They're talking bonds like it's a real estate mortgage. They have no clue what they're talking about right now because they have a new team and this is like, they just want to keep the business. So with that being said, I was thinking they have a bank called Feinmark. It's a pretty classy operation and they have something that I can think could be very, very effective. They can certainly domicile funds. They have tremendous political clout locally, tremendous political clout. And
But they can't issue bonds.
Commissioner
I'm
Mullins has his
not-
hand raised for.
yeah, I know, but I'm not done yet. So what I'm trying to say is from a bank perspective, that we wanted to have maybe, for example, meetings in town. They could domicile they could hold some of our money. They have a situation there that is the reason they've gone from a few hundred million to several billion now. They're the fastest growing bank ever. They have a chef, right? They got a chef. They got their own chef. And if you're a client,
They got a
You-
barber too?
no, they got a shoe shop guy. No, but anyway, if you want to have an event, you pay cost, and the chef is off the charts. Do you know how much people have, you know, with the goodwill and the organization? So what I'm trying to say is, there are banking services out there that are right in front of us that we really need to talk to and with, because Feinmark, you have the political connections. Feinmark is in, I mean, they, from the state side and the local legislative side, you'd be shocked at who they know and how they know. All the good old boy network, they're dead and buried. Talking, the new power is the people that have made something of their businesses in the past 10 years. And no one, and I'm not even a client of Feinmark. Well, I think I'd want to go there, but no bank has progressed from a local private banking and high net worth banking than Feinmark has in the past.
Mr. Chairman, point of clarification.
That's all.
Point
I'm
of
trying to say.
clarification.
There's other options out there, and we just want to talk to them.
There are different options.
Fair enough. Different. But,
Point of clarification, Mr. Chairman.
well, we have yes, Michael, your hand is up. Yes, sir.
Yes, please. I think I heard you say, and I'm trying to clarify it, that you're not asking to change now, you're asking to have somebody research the change. So I
That's
think I'm happy with that. If we can move on, I'm happy that we do that. We look into it, and at a future meeting after the data is available, we look at it again.
Look into it. Yeah, there's no way we can say change now. Like they said, we're in the middle of a big project.
Yeah, this is something for when the project is all done, all the T-bills matured, all the cash has gone out. We haven't even talked about what kind of a reserve we want to have after this project is done. Is it going to be are we just going to have $1 million in our assets rather than 5 million?
Probably. Depends how much money we can raise.
Exactly.
Depends how much we can raise. If we can raise a lot, we can keep a lot.
We can't sell more than $18 million worth of bonds. So
And what's the rationale for the reserve? What are we trying to do?
that's just to build up money so that every 7 or 8 years when we do a renourishment, we have money. So all of this whole $5 million of total assets, that could be down to $1 million.
That's right. Could be less.
Depending on what the state does,
Right.
what the feds do, right?
Mhm.
And we're not even sure the feds are going to do anything.
Mike Mullins, Commissioner Mullins, question, does anyone, and also for Jennifer, where are we with the team that used to do our bonds at Fifth Third and went to the other bank? What's the name of that bank again?
Before I answer that, can I just comment on something that Commissioner Pyle just said? I would love the idea of reserves. I think we better read our rules of procedure to see if it allows us to carry money over past the project for future. I mean, we can keep money left over from parking and from extra taxes and so on, but when we go through a project, if we collect X amount of money, we better be clear, we understand what it says in the rules of procedure about that relative to the enabling. I would love to do it. I just don't know that we can actually legally keep money back in reserve other than just to run the office for a year. So I don't want to argue it, but I'll look into it and see what the rules of procedure say. And Ralph can look into it as well.
Thank you. And I agree. I'm sure we're all in agreement there.
And then Renee, I'm sorry I cut you off, but what was your question again? What is the other bank we're looking into?
Yes. The one with the Fifth Third team that really did the
Synovus is the bank. The reason we talked to Synovus is we noticed that the Captiva Fire Department had published in the paper that they had obtained a credit limit and so on with Synovus Bank. And I called them up to ask them why they left Fifth Third. And basically they told me that they liked the guy who had been at Fifth Third and he moved to Synovus and they was able to provide certain facilities to them and so on. And so we started talking to this guy, Jim, I forget his last name now, but and he does seem to be very knowledgeable. So I think that we should definitely. Sorry.
Part of the update, I'm sorry. Okay, John had a question.
Yeah, I have the rule on the bank accounts. So rule 0.204 on the bank accounts, item C, bond fund. The administrator will review the debt service fund requirements annually at budget time and transfer all excess funds, i.e. those funds above 10% holdback requirement, into the project reserve fund. Interest earned on debt service shall flow into the project reserve fund. CEPD board shall set up a project reserve fund to fund startup costs for the next project. In setting up the project reserve fund, CEPD board shall take into consideration the annual flow of funds from the debt service revenue. Interest earned in the project revenue fund shall remain in the project fund to counter inflation. If excess funds accrue in the project reserve fund, these funds can be used to offset non-ad valorem expenses, such as being applied against future project costs, community-wide assessments, funded interest, and etc. Unanticipated costs may be paid with funds borrowed from the project reserve fund to be repaid by the next year's ad valorem proceeds from the general fund.
Good job. Thank you.
Yeah, that doesn't really help me understand the question though. I mean, maybe if we parse it carefully, but Ralph, does that answer the question that after a project is finished, we can carry reserves more than say 10% forward to the future?
I think the basic general idea is the project funds from the bonds have to be used for projects, either this one or the next one, where the ad valorem is used for your general government activities other than the project. And I did hear something about 10%, but I don't remember what John said, more or less than 10% as he
Rather
was
than
reading that.
debating it now, I think it's a good idea what Treasurer Pyle said. If we can build up the reserve, I've always been in favor of that. But I would say we need to parse this wording very carefully to make sure that we're doing it consistent with what's in those rules. And it sounded pretty involved to me. So at another time, we should really understand it and get a clarification from you as to exactly what we can do and not do.
Yeah, let's go very carefully. We'll put together a memorandum on that.
Yeah, I knew there was something in there, and thank you, John, for looking it up to help me understand, but I knew there was something in there very specific, and we need to be sure we understand exactly what that says we can do.
I think the one paragraph might be a little specific for that is the excess funds accrue in the project reserve can be used to offset non-ad valorem expenses such as being applied against future projects, community assessments, and other funded interests. So other capital projects may be paid, and that it may be rolled forward into future project budgets, but not into the general budget.
Yeah, let me just illuminate a little bit that in the last project, we got a lot of money from the governments that we didn't expect to get, even though we lost the federal money. And we had permission, or we had a referendum to borrow $15 million, which we did. And we ultimately were taking all the reserves, charging no interest on the administration of the project, and all the reserves would reduce so that Captivans paid only about $5.5 million for the project. At the time, I was advocating to keeping reserves and not giving such a big discount, if you will, to the property owners, and keeping some for a rainy day, if you will, for the future. And at the time, then chairman and administrator and most of the board, the attorney of record at the time was consulted, and they came back and told me it was not feasible to do it. So I think it's a brilliant idea to do it. It's important to do it, and especially in years when we had a lot of money. If we had saved $5 million from then, say charge the people $10 million instead of $5 million, it would have made it a lot easier this time around. So anyway, let's make sure we clearly understand exactly what parameters that gives us. And if we can do it, yes, by all means, let's try to create a bigger reserve.
We should make it a focus to try to make it happen. All right,
So,
Jennifer.
just to piggyback on what you were asking, Chair Maville, in terms of where we are regarding the banks. Mike and I did meet with Jim from Synovus, who was previously with Fifth Third, about a month and a half ago. And then about 2 weeks ago, I met with Fifth Third Bank. I also reached out to representatives at Busey Bank and Capital Bank. Busey unfortunately doesn't do these types of loans, and I never heard back from the individual at Capital Bank. So after the last meeting that I had with Fifth Third, I asked both Fifth Third and Synovus to go ahead and prepare a proposal, what that would look like. Fifth Third should have theirs to me hopefully this week. I did receive our term sheet already, our proposal term sheet from Synovus Bank that I'll be forwarding to all of you for your review. But once I get Fifth Third, I'll send that out as well. And then maybe in our next meeting, we can vote on which direction we want to go. So very quickly, I'm going to kind of change the order a little bit. I wanted to address the agenda change and talk about the email that we received from Commissioner Mullins last night regarding the follow-up items and the commitments that were made on during the February meeting to have the apportionment vote in the March meeting. I did not address that clearly, I believe, in the March meeting as to why we didn't have the vote, so I do apologize for that. However, my plan was to have Daniel talk to you all, give you an update on where we are in terms of the project, and then also add in some of the communication that we gave from our March 8th meeting. Again, I did not clarify or state why we weren't asking for a vote for the apportionment as I should have. So I apologize for that. But I'm going to have Dan give the project update and also talk about the apportionment piece as well.
Okay. So I'd like to start by reiterating my notes from the March 8th meeting, which I presented to the board. I'll just read them as I have them. The CEPD is exploring different options for apportionment. These include an approach based on storm and recreation benefits, a hybrid model that is based on storm benefits, and an ad valorem approach for the recreation benefits. And more recently, we're beginning to examine an approach that attributes the grant money to the properties within the quarter-mile beach access points that are responsible for receiving that grant money. Once bids are open and we can finalize our tentative costs, the models can be finalized and presented. Then a public hearing will take place to hear the input from the public prior to adopting a tentative apportionment through resolution. In terms of the new apportionment model that was requested of the quarter-mile beach access, I've prepared my initial model of that. And I've provided it to Bob Gray as well as Ansha Baumgarten for their review and vetting, see if they have any comments on it. We've not heard back yet to finalize anything like that. So once the bids are open, as I was saying, we'll know the contractor's estimated cost so that we can present a realistic number. And I think it's important that we do that because starting way back, we estimated a $30 million project, and it maybe got some people up in arms because it more than doubled the last time. And more recently, back in February, Tom Piero briefed that the project anticipated cost may be $20 million. So it's already gone down $10 million. We're opening the bids in April 22nd. We're opening the bids, so it's not too far off that we'll know
Good day.
the anticipated amount that we can be spending.
How many bids do you have so far?
We
On the
cannot see
pumping?
the bids until it's open. We had.
I mean, they don't give the bid to the last second.
How
Because
how many,
The old days, they would
And I'll
wait at the
discuss,
door until 4:35.
And I'll get more into
Right,
the project portion of that in just a moment. So once we have the contractor's estimated costs, I believe that's the appropriate time that we publicize the models, and it'll also give us some additional time to continue to massage those models to finalize them, so that they're correct before we go presenting to everybody. Up on the screen, you'll see the slide from the PowerPoint that was also presented. If you notice,
make it
you
a
probably
full
cannot
slide,
read the
I was
third
trying.
one down.
It
Is
has
the one with the hourglass on it is the step that we're currently at, which, to reiterate, is just waiting on the estimated cost of the project.
There you go.
And then once we have, the next step down from that is to actually prepare the tentative apportionment model and then present it to the public.
Okay.
Daniel, you in the past have taught how much interest there was off of this website that the
Command
contractors.
Star.
What was your final number? Was it like six people who expressed a lot of interest?
So at my last, which will kind of bring us into the beach project update. So we had a pre-bid conference on April 1st, which was a mandatory pre-bid conference for the contractors to attend. In that meeting, we had the three major dredging companies that we anticipated, and Weeks, Great Lakes, and Manson.
Yeah.
They all attended that, as well as some other companies also attended that. And the purpose of that meeting was to allow them to issue questions or points of clarification. We did receive two emails from Weeks as well as Manson requesting clarification on points, which Aptum as well as some portions of the CEPD will be issuing out an addendum to the bid documents, which will be placed on Demand Star on Thursday, which is a week prior to opening, which will give them a week to understand fully if any clarifications that they needed prior to submitting their bid. As Chairman Bell said, before they place their bids last minute, we anticipate.
So were you satisfied with the number of people who were interested in coming to Q&A?
Absolutely. We got the three that we anticipated have the equipment to actually do the project. We had 34 companies actually download the plans. We had, I believe there's 10 or 11 people that are actively watching it, including the three major dredge companies, but a lot of times some of the subcontractors will watch it so they can reach out and touch base with whoever actually wins the bid. So
Well, that's great news, guys.
It's absolutely been a super easy process to implement. I'm glad that we did it online.
Mike has a question as well. Commissioner Mullins, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a comment first, which is that I think this is all important relative to our project going forward. But it sort of begs the question as to what the objection was that was raised in the minutes. And that is that back in, I think it was February, I asked if we have a timeline for when we're going to deal with the publication of the apportionment and making a decision on the tentative apportionment. And in response to that, we had said it would be done in March. I understand that we revisited it because of changes, and that's always fine. But I still think we need a timeline of saying when we're going to do it. And I think it's important to understand, to bifurcate the idea of the project and what it costs and the apportionment model, because regardless of what it costs, the tentative apportionment model needs to be created. It could be done 3 months from now or whenever we say we want to do it. But it doesn't matter what cost comes back on the bids unless they're significantly out of whack with what we think we can do, and we can scale back the project accordingly. But the apportionment model says the final numbers are really going to be after the project is finished and after we know what grants we're getting. So all I'm saying is this kind of muddies the water a little bit in getting away from the need for a tentative apportionment model, which is separate from what the actual cost of the project is going to be. And I'm happy to see us go forward and get the bidding as we said we were going to do in order to be able to move forward with the project. But we should have a timeline that we communicate, because several times we have communicated when we thought we might have a tentative apportionment and have yet to give an updated timeline to the community to say when we're going to call them together. And normally that's something we would want to do in season. So if we're waiting till after the responses come back, then we're basically saying we either going to have to do it via Zoom communication and email, but we cannot have a public hearing unless there's sufficient people in the community. And I think Ralph will tell us that doing that in the summertime may present problems. We have to have a physical meeting. So I was trying to say, let's nail the plan so we can plan ahead to have physical meeting. All of this stuff is great detail relative to finding out what the project is going to cost. I saw the vendors had asked questions. One of them had asked for a delay of, I think, 2 weeks in reply. Let's put that aside for the moment and recognize that is not what the tentative apportionment is about. And in the February meeting, I think I explained what the apportionment was to distinct, because the same distinction was made then that Daniel's response on the tentative apportionment was about getting the bids back. And that's a separate effort and a separate concept than creating a model as to how we're going to spread these costs, whatever they may be. Is there anybody in the room that understands that?
Yes, I would respond to that. I believe it's important to put out accurate information as far as when we put these models up. If we settle in on a number that you would like to see on the models, I don't have an issue. And again, the additional models still being massaged and being reviewed. But when we started out, it kind of puts people up in arms when you put a $30 million project up there and it turns out to only be 20 million or 15 million. So at the same time that we're kind of pushing back when we get these bids back, so we have a realistic model, the math equation to it is still being massaged and is soon to be prepared after we get these bid documents.
Yeah, I think that's nice to think that way, and I respect that that's your point of view. But given that we have 30 years of history of doing it, historically, the tentative apportionment is put out before we know the number. So we go with the best bet number. And when we send letters to everybody in the community, we tell them, here's your range of costs from low, not to maximum, but to high. And you put in some assumptions that say, assuming we get this much money from the county, we get this much money from whatever. So I think you're confusing the final apportionment, which will come after the project is done, with the tentative, which is based on the best information you have today. So I really think it confuses matters to say that we need to know that. I mean, it might be nice to have it, but the two are really separate efforts. We're doing a model, a methodology based on how we go about how we're going to apportion it, and people are going to want to know that. And the exact number is helpful, but that's not a requirement and it never has been. Usually the tentative model is done a year or two or more before we actually go and get bids. So I think your opinion is valued, but I don't think it's relevant to, if you're telling me from a planning point of view or a staff point of view, we don't have the time to get it completed or whatever, that's a different issue than we do scheduling. but it has nothing to do with what the actual cost is going to be, because we've had a range of costs for a while, and we have an even better range today. And you might have a specific number soon, but again, that has nothing to do with how the model goes. Whatever the cost is, and whatever funding we get will change the ultimate. So getting people a general sense allows them to plan and to budget. And I'm happy to say we'll do it in, in June or something, but it's important to let people know, because there's a lot of people that have been reaching out to us with complaints about, what is it going to cost? I don't like this approach or that approach. We've made some decisions, and I think we need to solidify those decisions.
Yeah, but this is Dick, I think Daniel's approach is perfectly positioned. We can't go out with a number, like he said, 30 million, and then it's 20 million and whatever. That to me is not giving the constituents the level of comfort that they need. And the other thing is that after May 1st, we're going to know when the project's going to start. And that to me seems to be a perfect time to give them our best thinking as far as what the cost is, because we're going to know what the bids are. I'd rather see that approach rather than saying, let's give them a number a year and a half before the project is done.
And Mike, I'm in agreement with Dick. I think we're gonna have closer numbers.
Well, I think you're all missing, I'm not being very clear about the point of why we need a timeline, and we should be documenting this in a timeline and letting the people know what's going on, rather than just going month to month to month to month. And, hopefully we get bids that are going to start soon and we have good numbers in them, et cetera. But separate and apart from that is we haven't communicated to the community when we're going to give them a tentative apportionment, which those of us that have been around for a long time should remember are historically done well before the project starts. In this case, we've shifted it a few times because of some challenges that people in the community made as to our methodology. So I'm not saying do it before May 1, but I think we need to publish a timeline, and we're overdue. The last time I asked about it in February, I was told that we would be doing it in March. That's obviously changed with good reason, but let's get a timeline down.
But Mike, also, if we say, oh, we think it might be a $30 million project, then
Well, we have already better information than that. We think it's going to be 23 to 25 now.
Okay, no, what I was saying is, when someone's bidding something, you have a contractor bidding something, and you've already told the people, well, in our budget, we think it might be, just pick a number, 25 million. Suddenly their 20 million became 22 because our expectations were 25. It could skew their bid because they think we got plenty of money. I mean, from a psychological perspective.
Well, they already know we have an $18 million. I really don't think they think that way. I mean, you might think that way. They don't. The truth of the matter is that in the last project that we did, we borrowed 15 million because we thought the project in the original estimates might be $25 million. In the end, it came out to be closer to 20 million. And we got enough grants from the state and from the county that reduced the direct cost to Captiva to 7.5 million. And then we used about 2 million of our reserves to take it down to 5.5. So all I'm saying is managing the expectation, if it's on the higher side now, that's actually better in terms of what you're going to show people in the final analysis, because people are not going to be as up in arms during the tentative process. I just think we need to complete a timeline, say when we're going to do it, and spend some time resolving this apportionment that's been an open issue for quite a while. And I'm not sure that we have the knowledge and expertise in the office yet to fully understand how an apportionment model works. I know we're improving on it, and we've got some spreadsheets, but I'm not convinced that I've seen that knowledge has developed, and the board should be discussing some of these issues, and we're not. So I'm just simply saying, let's put a timeline down. Let's put a stake in the ground that says, here's when we're going to have a tentative apportionment letter going out, and when we're going to hold a public meeting. And I think that gives us an opportunity to make sure we continue to work on that and not ignore it.
I just want to point out too that the slide that's on the screen, the step that we're currently on, the estimated total cost of the project, that's what we're going to find out when we get these bids. That's not going to be the final cost. It's going to go up or down based on the total amount of sand that they actually have to pump out on the beach, or the plus or minus 25%. So So once we have that, that's when the enabling legislation says that we're supposed to prepare this tentative apportionment. We have the math equation.
But go slowly, Daniel, you just kind of said enabling legislation. Clarify what you mean by what does it say in this regard?
The portion in there where it says the board shall consult with the engineer and prepare a tentative apportionment for the estimated total cost of the project for the Goldfront lands and other lands that may be specially benefited and subject to special easement or special assessment under the resolution. That estimated total cost is what's going to be returned in the bids. We'll know the estimated
No,
total
but that's
cost.
not an estimated, that's an actual. I think you're confusing that we've already been consulting with the engineers. I'm not trying to get this done before the bids come back. But what I'm trying to say to you is you're misinterpreting the enabling legislation. We've consulted with engineers and the economists and so on for a couple of years now. And we've seen those numbers get better and better. And we'll have an actual number, but that's not an estimate. That's an actual at that point. So all I'm saying is don't confuse the tentative with the final. And I think that's what you're doing. And I have no problem. Let's just complete a timeline and say when we're going to do this stuff, because you're dancing around in circles that are not relevant to
It's not
what the tentative.
It is tentative. I have to interrupt. Based on the volume of sand, it's not like, when the actual dredgers come, there could have been a storm before it and it's more, or it could be less. So thus it is tentative if we were to put out an estimate a month from now, once we get some bids. So, it's never an exact, they're not gonna say, we're gonna,
No, it's still going to be tentative. And then, because we don't even know how much money we're going to get from the governments. I'm simply saying, let's put it in a timeline. Are we afraid to put some dates down there of saying we're going to do this? Because I think we're way overdue to do it. And I'm not asking you to do it before the bids come back because we're too far along anyway. But I think we need a timeline.
Okay, so then let's clarify that. In my notes, after a meeting with you, Mike, I want to say back in February, I wrote down town hall. So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. Daniel has all three apportionment models ready in terms of their math formulas. They're all ready in spreadsheets. He's already done 2 workshops. We did one where I believe, Mike, you and I don't know, one other commissioner were in attendance. And then he did a second one where we had, I think, 2.5 commissioners present. So we are ready to go in terms of presenting these to you. Would you all like them either A, in the format of a workshop, or would you like us to present them at a public hearing, or C, do you want us to do a town hall? Either way, I think it's probably important that we have a workshop where all of you are able to attend so that we all are on the same page with the way that the 3 models work. So if you'd like us to schedule that, we can certainly do that for the 29th. And then we can talk about, decide if we want to do a town hall or just a public hearing where we present the apportionment models. I just thought in my notes, I have the town hall to be used to talk about the project in terms of when it's going to start, when we anticipate it ending, just to give the public an update on the project, and then also to present the 3 apportionment model formulas. So
You said a lot. Can I address a couple of the points? The word town hall was sort of being synonymously public hearing. And then I clarified for you that I think the wording in the enabling legislation is public hearing. So we're not going to do 2, a town hall and a public hearing. The law requires that we send out a letter to everybody with our tentative apportionment after we've decided what it is and what our methodology is and what the board has voted to send out as a tentative apportionment. That has to be sent, and you have to hold a public hearing within 2 weeks of that. So we need to then lay these things down. When can we have a meeting of the board? And I don't care whether it's in June or it's in August or September or October, whatever it is, the board needs to decide the dates. And then we need to firm that up. And then sometime in between, we got to make sure we do what we have to do to agree on the apportionment models, because there's a lot of issues that have been up in the air. And yes, there's several spreadsheets. It's not easily understood from the spreadsheets. I know Daniel can explain it, but it gets very confusing to the public as to how we're doing certain things. So I think the base assumptions rather than the numbers in the spreadsheet have to be clarified in English. I'll call them term issues. So I'm fine with whatever the board wants to do relative to doing it. I just would like us to see this timeline down so we can move forward against a plan rather than playing it by ear.
June tentatively for what, Chairman Wall? For the
June.
public hearing or the workshop? Or do you want a workshop?
Very few people here comes June.
Well, it can be through.
Yeah, but if it's a workshop and we're not voting on anything, it can be done virtually.
We should, okay, so let's plan on,
You want to do a workshop on,
no, but listen, let's do the workshop third week in May, because you'll have the bids in, et cetera. And then the hearing, what is it? I'm sorry.
well, from what Mike,
The process is a
The
workshop.
timeline,
we can't do it the third week of May. Daniel will be getting married that week. So could we do it,
Mid-May.
could we do it beginning of May? Like first Thursday?
That's like a few weeks from now. Let's make it mid-May. You want to get the bids. Let's take advantage of both
Okay,
sides here.
so let's say
Mid-May is fine.
mid-May.
You continue to muddy the waters when you say you want to get the bids. They're kind of irrelevant to what goes in the timeline.
I understand that, but I'm also thinking of that's,
So-
mid-May is 5 weeks from now.
What's the date?
well, if you're looking at talking to somebody in an open forum of some sort, the public is going to want to know.
Of course.
If we
Yeah.
don't have anything specific as to the cost,
Right.
they're all going to stand up,
I know.
get up, call me when you know the number.
Right.
So I'm trying to
Right.
clarify,
Mid-May workshop.
we will do, it's gonna be May 27th will be our workshop. Then
I thought he's getting married the third week of May.
he's getting
Can I make a
married.
suggestion? Why don't we back up from when we think we can hold a public hearing? And then make that our end goal, whenever it is, and then back up from there, the interim steps that we need to make.
Because I was thinking June would be the public hearing. But I figured we could be 30 days prepared. 1 week for the actual meeting, the workshop. Another week to prepare, another week for contingencies, and suddenly it's mid-June.
Well, our meeting is scheduled for June 7th. That's our next.
So
that would
can we
be-
try to have this ready by June 7th?
We'll
is
do
that
the public
realistic?
hearing is what
Yeah,
you're
the
saying?
public hearing.
Public hearing,
And I'm not sure if that has to be a separate meeting from a regular board meeting.
you should be able to have public hearings within your meeting.
It has to be after 5 o'clock legally.
Okay,
It's like, that's kind of the same idea with the chair, where we have to do it after 5.
And you have to be able to do the mailing to all property owners with the latest, whatever mailing list that we get from the property appraiser 2 weeks prior to the meeting. The meeting has to be held within 2 weeks of the mailing.
okay, so we could then in theory hold a special meeting?
Do we have to mail it, or can we just public advertise?
You have got to mail everybody gets an individual, it's not just a mailing of the meeting, it's a letter to each person telling them what the range of their personal tentative apportionment is. So for each property, it's going to be different. So you have to have calculated that revised spreadsheet with that information and generate a letter to each property owner with that information on it.
I understand. Thank you.
So the property owner letter has to go out 2 weeks, you said, Mike, right, prior to the public hearing?
You have to hold the hearing within 2 weeks after you've sent the letter.
Right.
Again, check the enabling legislation. It's very specific. I'm not trying to.
Then we send the letter mid-June. We have a public meeting in July specifically for that.
Yeah, but there'd be nobody here.
Well, if you send the letter mid-June, you can't hold a meeting in July. You have to do it within a 2 week period.
No, I
Hold
don't.
on, Mike's talking. What, Mike?
Renee just said, hold the meeting mid-June and then hold the public hearing and, I'm sorry, send the letters mid-June and send the hearing in July. They have to be within 2 weeks of each other. So if you did mid-June, by the end of June, you'd have to hold the public hearing. Now, Harry's got a point. People aren't going to be here. At the same time, it is the tentative apportionment, and, they can join via Zoom, and we can get phone calls and deal with the issues that come from it.
So usually it's like the trim hearings where we would have it the same day.
What
as a
about
board
May
meeting,
and
so
June
that you
rather
don't-
than June and July?
That's fine with me. I'm just trying to think of, everyone needs
Too
time.
many conversations. John, your logistics of doing a meeting and a public, hearing the same day is not issue. We can manage that. We can pick those separate dates. They don't have to be the same date. That's an insignificant issue. The bigger issue is, when can we do it? And is it acceptable to do it in the summer when most people are gone, given that we have Zoom and the capability of communicating with people
That's right.
the real issue is when can you get the apportionment decided? The board has to do that. And then when can you get the model completed to the point where we can do a mailing, where we have to send a letter to every property owner? Some of that is the staff that has to think about what that entails.
What does it take to do a model?
He's got, the models are done. We
You're
have
just
them
waiting.
finished. That's why I
You just
said,
want
why
to plug in the
can't,
numbers.
I would recommend that we do the workshop on 4/29, okay? Right, 4/29.
Okay,
And then that way you all can make a decision at that time. You'll ask questions and understand all three models and be thinking about, the decision you want to make. And then we could do the public hearing. We'd have to get the letters out after that meeting.
yeah, after that, but there's some subtleties here. Mike, you need to hear this. So for example, we've been in discussions that there should be, if you have a house that's very close to public access and you're getting a lot of extra people there, you should get a little bit of a benefit to that versus a person that's far away. We had all these discussions.
Yeah, we did have discussions. I haven't seen if Daniel has included that. He may have already included that in his third apportionment model. Daniel, do you want to speak to that?
I have. that's
Oh,
one of the
okay,
ones that
good.
they
And I have a
provide
question
Ancha.
for, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, that's one of the models that we forwarded to Ancha at the board's request.
Okay, good. Yeah. And then, excuse me, so the other thing is, I want to hear from Nicole Sharp about, because the question has still not been answered. If Harry pays, I use you as
Yeah,
an
go ahead.
analogy, so Harry gets 500 cubic yards of sand, and his cost is $20 a yard. And I get, in front of my house, I get 500 cubic yards of sand. Because that's what the design calls for. Am I still paying 20 or am I paying more because I'm in a different zone? It still has not been answered. Because they say, well, there could be, and I need to have a sit down or a phone sit down with Nicole Sharp to get that question answered. It's a very important question. And it's always been an issue. A former chairman always made it very important to tell the engineers, X amount of sand, you pay X amount of dollars. There are other, situations, but it doesn't have to do with the volume of sand.
Renee, a point that comes out of what you're saying is, Jennifer, I don't believe if we did this on the 29th, I'm all for doing it on the 29th. I don't believe it's going to happen in one session. I think it's very involved. Several of the commissioners have not attended the prior apportionment workshops, so they may be, behind the eight ball a little bit. I know that John Sylvia, for example, spent a lot of time with Evan back when getting an explanation, so maybe he's more up to speed than some others. I've been deeply involved in it. I need to see the latest version that deals with the issue relative to South Seas or relative to, distance from access and parking and so on. So to me, these are not simple workshops. I'm just trying to be clear with everybody. It may take several workshops before we get it. So I would honestly recommend that we just say, you know what, we're not going to be able to do the public hearing until the fall when everybody is back. And just take our lumps on that and then plan plenty of time between now and then to go over these models, make sure that everybody understands so that when the board votes on it, because the board is going to be voting in ignorance unless they deeply understand the changes that we're making. So I think we don't want to vote in ignorance. We want to be very informed. So how does everybody feel about putting it off till the fall, the public hearing, and sending letters out, let's say in October for a meeting in November?
Okay, so Mike, we're going to answer that question. I think you've come up, we have to have enough workshops. We're ready to go to the next stage about the public proclamation of what we've come up with. So we should start, because there are a lot of questions that have not been answered, such as South Seas, such as the volume of sand and the price, such as all the things we're discussing right now. Consequently, first workshop is April
29th.
29th.
It'll be the third workshop.
Right, and then there's a very strong chance that there's maybe going to be one or two more. And by then we'll know when we will have the public meeting on that. And we just leave it at that.
In this project,
The idea of a timeline is you sit down and you say, what's your end goal?
That's
And
just,
our end goal here is a public hearing. So let's pick the date and then work backwards from that about all the steps that work up to it. Because to me, I put out a proposition that maybe we need to put it off till the fall, because I don't think it's healthy to do something, as Harry said, when everybody's gone. And my feeling is that, we take our lump sum.
Good point. What if the bidders want to, what if construction begins in May? They want to just jump right in and get started.
We don't need to have the tentative apportionment before they start. Traditionally, it's been done that way, but it doesn't legally have to be done that way according to the enabling legislation. So we separate the two. That's why I say we bifurcate it. The project goes forward on the plan that Daniel is working with. Now we need a timeline for settling apportionment and establishing the tentative apportionment release and the public hearing. That's a separate parallel effort.
Okay, well, Mike, but I do, okay, I
So
think,
the sooner the better is my point.
yeah, but bacon has a better chance of becoming kosher than the dredges showing up in May. I promise you.
Can I
Well, what is your,
Yeah.
go ahead, Dan.
Okay, so just to clarify, the bids get opened on April 22nd.
Right.
I've anticipated April 29th, the same day that we're anticipating this first or third apportionment workshop, however we want to phrase it, for a workshop to discuss the bids that we've received, to be followed up at the May board meeting for us to actually ratify whatever decision. And
Who we pick.
there's no way possible the dredgers are gonna be able to go out there in May because they need, I think it's 70 days advance notice for them to be on the beach for the whole turtle monitoring.
Right,
So that-
60
that
days.
May is not an issue, but just to clarify that.
So best case scenario would be June. And if we know it's coming, we can move quicker. We just say, okay, guys.
Is it not crowding you if you're gonna get the bids back on the 22nd to then hold this apportionment workshop on the 29th? I feel like we're overloading you at a time when you're gonna be busy analyzing these bids and answering questions. And by the way, did we agree that we're not gonna give a 2-week extension to the one that requested it?
I don't believe a 2-week extension's needed for it, just in a brief talk with Nicole after seeing that earlier, but.
Tell them to work weekends.
Right.
Don't say the problem.
Just looking, one of the other dredging companies had more questions than the company that requested a 2-week extension, and they didn't request any sort of extension.
But are you gonna preclude them from being a bidder then if they say they need 2 weeks more, or you just think they're gonna get their bid in anyway, even though they don't get the 2 weeks?
I think they'll get their bid in anyways.
Well, they should call Nicole Sharp and explain why, and Nicole thinks it's legitimate, she'll talk to us. You know, let everyone do what they do best. And maybe Nicole.
The point is, you're saying, your assumption is, I would conservatively assume that we're gonna take 2 more weeks to get the replies back, but that's just me. But nevertheless, you're saying you're comfortable that we're not gonna give an extension, you'll get the replies back on the 22nd, and if we lose that one vendor, we lose that one vendor. That's what I think I just heard.
No, I didn't say that. I said that. they
Not
should-
not you, Daniel said it. Daniel said he doesn't think they need the extension, he doesn't want to grant it. That's what I thought I heard.
I don't believe it would be necessary, but I can follow up. Nicole Sharp earlier, when I talked to her, didn't believe they needed an extension, but I can follow up again. I don't believe that they would need an extra 2 weeks for the points of clarification that they're requesting. I don't think there's anything monumental in what they're asking, but.
Yeah, I don't know if any of the other commissioners read the replies, but I was kind of surprised at the level of the questions, given that all these vendors have done this before in the past, and Aptum have done it many times for us. And I was a little surprised that they couldn't have provided enough information in the request for proposal to preclude such detailed questions.
Yeah, but what was Nicole's reply? That was one side of the story. I saw Nicole's reply. Go ahead.
Can I respond? I just want to, I touched base with Nicole about the number of questions, and it's not an atypical amount of questions or clarifications to this. And she said that due to it being in Florida, this is the one time for the contractors to, massage the document to their liking, or to get anything changed or clarified before they bid, because once they bid, they're locked into it. And typically, Great Lakes responds with about 3 pages worth of questions. I think we actually had much less than that. And then Manson was the other one, and I think they had like 7 questions.
Well, there was one question I saw that I thought was incredibly legitimate, and that is, specific, it says borrow site, but they wanted to know exactly where the sand was at the borrow site, because it's been used before. So, to me, it was a legitimate question, but to me, that's just a phone call where they can call up Aptum and say, hey, we're working on our bid, and tell us about this borrow site. Oh yeah, here, we'll send you the sonar measurements so you can do it appropriately. I mean, I don't think we all have to,
So,
go
Mr.
in a-
Chairman, if I may, I want to put a specific question to Daniel then, which is, are you saying right now that we don't need an extension, in which case we can firm up that aspect of this timeline.
In my opinion, no, we don't.
Okay, so we're not going to do an extension. You'll get your replies back on the 22nd, with or without that. They'll probably bid anyway, or we'll answer the questions in the interim. And so then the next question becomes, do you have sufficient time after that, dealing with that data coming back and so on, to do an apportionment workshop on the 29th? Are you satisfied, or do you want more time for that?
Yes, I believe I can do both.
Okay. And then I'd like to address Renee's comments about, he has questions of Nicole Sharp. There are lots of nuances relative to what goes into the models. Hold on a second, just let me turn off my other phone. Sorry, call coming in my other phone. I just want to be clear, Mike. I'm sorry, Renee, that they're involved. So I don't think a single workshop session is going to do it. I don't think we're going to have all the answers on the apportionment before the May meeting. We might.
I agree. We all agree it's gonna take 2 or 3.
But then the question that I had on the table is, looking at the end date, can we say, I personally think that when people are gone, they're not going to be happy about not being able to attend a public hearing. So I think I agree with Harry that we should date in October or November for the public hearing.
Regardless of what the public hears, what I'm trying to explain is that
You
thanks to.
can't be regardless, because it's in the enabling legislation. That clearly drives us by law as to how we have to operate. So we need to know when that's going to be, and will that be satisfactory to the public to know that they can do this without being able to be here?
When are you gonna open up the bids on this, on April 22nd or 20?
April 22nd at 2 p.m.
Right.
It's directly abutting a workshop meeting that we're having.
Yes, we will be
If
having.
the purpose of the workshops is we want to get optimal results on fair distribution of the cost. And all, myself and Mike have raised some good issues about cell Cs, about volume and all that. And they should be addressed in a very distinct fashion, so we know we've done the best we can to make it fair for all. And if it takes 2 or 3 or 1 workshop, that's because at the end of the day, it's making it fair to the taxpayers. That is the #1 end game here. So that's all I want to point out. I'm not trying to pontificate, but I'm trying to say, so the people are going to appreciate that more than, well, I didn't get to hear. Then, whip up your phone or take your laptop out and look on the screen and press the button and listen all you want. All right, that's all I have to say. All right, so bottom line is, we're having a workshop, you're scheduling it, and we'll know a lot more by then. So go ahead, continue on the next item.
So, thank you for that. John, you're clear on next steps, correct?
Yes.
So I'm gonna have Dan talk a little bit about the parking lot upgrade, some issues that we've come across doing our due diligence. I'm gonna let him kind of go through the process of what we've learned. I know I've heard this before when I started here, that we did have some easement insufficiencies, but we did check in with the county to try to do some due diligence. So I'm gonna have Dan report out on his findings.
Jennifer, I'd like to make a motion on the last subject we were talking about before we move to a new subject. I'd like to make a motion that we establish the tentative public hearing based on the tentative apportionment in November of this year.
Okay.
I'll second it, even though I'm chairman, just
You can second a motion, you just can't make the motion. So,
And
discussion?
That's not going to be a problem if they've already started the project. And then we don't have a public hearing.
we change, we move it earlier. We do another motion to make it earlier. Okay. This way we can tell them they're gonna get their, this way we tell them, it's like, are we there yet? Yeah, in 10 minutes. Are we there yet? Yeah, in an hour. And we, the kids, when they say, we're there yet, we're there yet.
And to the point of the motion that I made, since we're in discussion, is that I feel that there's a lot of loose ends around apportionment, and it's confusing, and there's been a lot of people active in the community who paid a lot of attention to it, who know a lot more than some of our board members, because they've really drilled down on this stuff.
Give them a date.
Some of the changes that we're talking about making can be controversial. So I just want to say that I think we're going to need time, and by establishing it now and setting a date in the fall gives us time to do all the things we need to do between now and then to resolve it and be absolutely certain when we're there.
When people call and moan, I'm gonna say, call Mike Moan, he'll explain why it's in November. Because, and he's right, I'll tell him he's right. Okay, so, that was the, committee. Okay, so let's see, call vote. Mike, you get to call the vote.
Call the vote.
Vice Chairman Sylvia,
Yes.
Treasurer Pyle,
Yes.
Secretary Kaiser,
Yes,
Commissioner Mullins,
Yes.
and Chairman Neville.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Now Jennifer has the floor, please, no interruptions.
As I said, I'm gonna turn this over to Daniel to talk about our discovery regarding the parking lot upgrade.
Okay, so I've been asked to investigate the feasibility of our dream list of parking lot improvements for Allison Haggard parking lot. These include, hardening the area that people park on so that it doesn't erode the way it does. A gate at the beginning, as well as a hard bathroom, hard structure bathroom. The first note and the most troubling of them is the same reason we were denied for the portable bathrooms is if we don't have an electrical and utility easement to get to any structures, whether it be an electrical gate or the hard structure bathroom, we're dead in the water if we don't get an easement like that. It's just not gonna happen. If there's no sort of utility or electrical, we can potentially do the upgrades. Say if we wanted to do pavers in the parking lot, something we've discussed in the past, we would just need an affidavit of authorization from the owner of the property, which on the one side would be South Seas, I believe. On the other side, there's another owner there that would have to do that. In terms of the gate, there's another.
wait, excuse me,
Yes.
for the pavers, what do you need?
We would need an affidavit of authorization from the owner of the property.
Why? It's the, who owns the property?
Lee
South
County.
Seas and Lee County.
South Seas.
South Seas,
Wait a minute,
Lee
South
County,
Sea.
and,
They own it together.
oh, there were 3 owners, I think, of the
So-
property, right?
So Susie Hendry has a little portion, like at the very end.
Where people physically drive, where it's used as a parking lot.
Right. All we have is a ingress and egress easement as well as for maintenance of the.
So
And
what
revenue
does
collection.
South Seas get out of this if they own the property? I mean, we're not giving them a check for the parking lot revenue.
No, they provided us with the ingress, egress easement and the ability to collect revenue on the lot. And that's our old agreement from the 80s.
Well, why can't we add pavers in the beginning so that it's better for the people who are driving or trying to drive their cars into the parking lot during the rainy season?
Because it's not
With
our
big
property.
gullies
Well,
there.
the bottom line is we have to ask the other people's
Yeah,
permission.
it's not our property.
Yeah, but we've been doing this for how many years?
It's still not our property.
Yeah, I
We
know.
would
It's
still
Harry,
need
it's like if
authorization.
I'm your neighbor, right? And we use an easement. I say, Harry, can I pave on your pavers? You say, I don't want pavers on my easement. It's my easement. And you get, I guess, okay.
Oh, God.
Okay, so bottom line is,
So that's
We need
a
information.
difficulty because we don't
Got
physically
it.
own the
Yeah.
property.
Got
Going back to the gate that was requested, I guess, for security purposes, there's a portion in the land development code that requires stacking prior to the gate and as well as a turnaround on the ingress side of the gate. And just geographically, it's not very feasible, but I've
We don't need
scheduled a
anything.
meeting with the county at the end of this month
right.
to discuss some of these things, to see if there's any waivers or any way around these requirements, just based off of the.
Well, the big question is, and I think it might be, why can't we get water and electricity so that we can build a facility in concrete, not have those disgusting porta potties that we're getting paid the king's ransom for?
That goes back to the easement issues. If we can get South Seas to grant us an easement across their property and run electric and water and sewer or septic, then,
So it has to come from them. It
right,
can't-
because they own the property.
And only South Seas?
Whoever the electric or utilities, whoever that would physically run across their property, we would need an easement from
So
the
it might
property
be
owner.
just South Seas,
It
but
may
it
be
might be
just
somebody
South
else
Seas.
too.
I don't anticipate
Is
having to
there a
run across the
map?
whole.
Is there a map that shows if this is the
I
project?
had authorized, I had asked Wagenti to get a survey and he did get one and it lays out, he didn't have everybody on it because I know that there's a party that donated a perpetual easement up there that we don't even know who they are, whether we have valid title, but I discussed that with Ralph in the past. But the other two parties are Susie Henry and South Seas. And I think that I also looked into the fact that legally you could put a bathroom seaward of the coastal construction line. That's the one thing that they make an exception to it. So we could actually maybe buy a little piece of land from Susie Henry or grab a corner of it that's not South Seas, that's on this property of this other party, but you need to look at the survey to see where you would put it to do what you're talking about.
Right, it'll be a toilet and a septic system because we would not,
No,
septic
think
or
about-
lift station to go to South
A
Sea.
toilet on the beach. That's not gonna fly.
And we
Not here,
didn't,
not here. Mind your Marco Island, but not here.
That's not gonna.
and we didn't get a chance to put this in the pack, and I can certainly send it out to the
Is that- what is
commissioners.
that? Is that-
I created this using that GIS system that I acquired
Oh,
from Lee
nice.
County,
Let me see.
which is not survey quality, but I've outlined the property as well as.
Okay, there's the outline, but who owns what here?
So on the right side of the paper, you'll see South Seas. The middle portion, the middle little block, there's the Lee County right of way, which is just basically the street. As
Okay,
well
so
as the left side Susie Henry's property.
All right, so you have restroom, gate. This doesn't show what sections are which. So can you
essentially-
just?
so-
Okay.
This over
That's-
here is.
Well, we know,
South Seas.
yeah, we know this is South Seas. You're saying this here is South Seas?
Yes,
All
that
right,
portion,
okay,
this
fine.
is the whole property right there,
And where's Henry?
this property line.
Oh,
So
Wow.
this little 30-foot section is the Lee County right of way, which was a proposed street.
so why can't we buy this from Henry, make her an offer she can't refuse, and put the toilets there with the understanding we get a hook up to her utilities?
Because we're talking,
What?
we could make her an offer. It is.
Hey, I'm a little confused. Are you looking at something that's not on the screen?
It's a piece of paper, Mike. I wish here. That's the answer. Are you kidding? If you're bringing in $500,000 a year, you offer $2 million, that's still a 25% return on the money. I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Well, I
$2 million
think-
bucks, I'll go buy that property now if she wants to sell it.
If
The
we did,
entire property,
yeah,
just to
that's-
sell you that little portion for 2.5.
Our only solutions would be to either purchase the properties or to get authorization or affidavit of authorization from all property owners.
With all due respect, Daniel's got these bids coming back. He's working on the apportionment. And I just feel like this is this been a project that people have aborted for the last 3 years, not being able to make the right kind of progress on. And I think trying to solve it in a 5-minute conversation now, I would almost say, can you put this off till the May meeting? After you've at least had the bids back and Daniel has devoted his time to that process and the apportionment. That's just my perspective. I think we're overloading him with something at a time when there's no easy answers on this. I'd rather keep him focused on apportionment and the bid process.
I would just say that just due to my previous line of work, working at DCD, I have a lot of connections in there. So getting the answers to some of these questions may not be as difficult. And I have the very broad general knowledge of everything within the land development code that I've dealt with in the past. So just being able to coordinate this meeting and stuff, even if, I'm not taking point on it, I can be involved and it won't overload me. I can assure you of that.
This lady, Susie Hendry, is that the lady that lives there now, the one, is this the Bass Pro Shop heir?
Yes, but she doesn't live there very much. She rents it out. But yes, she is the woman no, she's not an heir. Her brother owns Bass Pro Shops, yeah. John has seen the property. I've seen the property. She's very agreeable to work with, but I did ask her if we could take a little corner towards the entrance to widen the entrance. And she referred John, I believe, to a contractor that she was working with to find a better way to move the original approach forward without having her getting involved in easements. That's not to say we can't buy something from her, but
Is there something here?
Well,
They thought if they bought this toilet, this would solve all the problems.
Yeah.
And then they couldn't get they couldn't get a easement.
Well, who was in
southeast
charge
to
then
put
when
the
that
toilet.
decision was made? No offense. But that, I mean, look, am I missing something here, or is that too many years?
This has been going on for
Yeah,
years and years.
yeah,
and
but
years.
forget it, we're all new here, right? You buy a
Yeah, we're all
little chunk
new.
of the land, you put the toilet there, you're done. With the understanding you can plug in the electric and the water, you can tap into her.
Renee, you do have a great capacity for oversimplification.
Well, it's
So-
worked for me so
So
far, my dear.
I would recommend that you just let Daniel and I meet with the county so we can do more due diligence.
Yeah,
And you're right, Mike, it's not gonna be solved in a 5-minute conversation. It's gonna take multiple conversations.
uh-huh.
And we just wanted to give you all an update since we applied for a grant to upgrade the parking lot. And Mike had asked us about an electric gate. So we just wanted to give a.
No, that's all nice, and I'll only ask this once. But if this Henry lady would sell us that little portion, and the county would allow us to plug in, who in this room and on that camera would think that that would not be a great idea? Just raise your hand to say it's not a good idea. That's what I thought. Did you raise your hand, Dick?
No, I just,
We'll get some more information when we meet.
I mean,
with the county
that's
and
exciting.
Bring that up.
Because
Bring
it's
that
been
up as an
years, the
option.
problem with the park.
Renee, I'd like to make a motion if I may.
Yeah, uh-oh.
I move that the board appoints Chairman Maville to be responsible for seeing all this thing through, and the rest of us will come in after he has a plan with a timeline as to how to accomplish.
Are you kidding me?
We'll come in with the scissors, so cut the
Bill-
wood.
Bill,
That's a
they-
motion. Sorry, gentlemen, there's a motion on the table. It needs to be seconded. or-
Conditions at sunset.
Renee, the motion is on the table. You have to respect that a motion has been made and to ask for a second, okay?
It's on that motion.
please look for a second.
Can I second your motion?
Sure.
I'll second it.
Now, discussion.
Daniel has his hand up.
I just want to make a point of clarification, even if we buy that portion of Suzie Henry, without knowing where the existing utilities and electric are run through.
That's
Yeah,
called
we still have
doing
to
our
come-
diligence. That's called we do our
I'd like to
diligence.
remind staff that unless they're asked a specific question, when a motion is on the table and it's been seconded and we're in discussion, it's up to the board commissioners to discuss the motion and then to invite staff in if they have questions of it.
I did, I invited him in, Mike. It was my doing. Anyone else? I'll do this. I like this. I'm
It's
not-
trying to drill down and solve this thing in 5 minutes, and I'm trying to get it onto your shoulders, get the monkey off our back and let you go and deal with it.
Listen, I got a blind pass open, didn't I?
Are we in discussion or are we listening to Daniel? I'm trying to understand. It's confusing on my end.
Daniel's finished, the motion's on the floor, there's no more discussion.
Now, there is more discussion. I made the motion, I get to call them, yeah. I would like to remind you that when I joined the board back in 2006, we spent months talking about why there was no money coming in, the machine was broken. And I kept volunteering to be a committee of one to deal with it. It took the board 6 months to finally agree to let me do it. Added a second machine, put on the awning, did a whole bunch of things for $20,000. We suddenly had it working. That's a different set of issues, but my point is, this can't be done by committee. It needs to be done by a single commissioner taking responsibility to run with it and then coming back to the board with recommendation. And my motion was to ask you to be that person, as you know a lot about engineering and plans and saving money. So I would like to call the vote at that point.
There you go. Call the vote.
Vice Chairman Sylvia,
Yes.
Treasurer Pyle,
Gladly.
Secretary Kaiser,
By all means. We've been working on this for,
Commissioner
starting with the
Mullins?
holes in the.
Yeah, in honesty, we either need a yes or an aye, but clearly yes.
and Chairman Maville.
Absolutely.
The motion passes.
And just as a background, it's true, Mike, the bull BS he had to deal with at the time was just off the charts. Board members were fighting because they wanted to go and pick up the bag of change and then spend an hour and a half with his assistant who, and then they were all itching to go to the green flash. I mean, you have no idea the crap he went through. It was Looney Tunes.
Renee, you were so frustrated with the process that you said we should make the whole thing free.
I probably did, but I was altruistic.
Hold
I
on.
And
And
the,
there was at least one commissioner in every meeting counting the change from the machine and putting it in those little paper coin thing. So let's move on now.
What to think,
Oh,
trust me. All right, I'm excited.
I see. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so, two short things, or three short things, sorry. I am going to, as I said in a previous email, look into setting up strategic planning for our district. I think it's very important for us to have a look at what we're gonna do business-wise and planning 3, 5, 10 years out. I have contacted USF as well as FGCU, who both have government strategy planning offices, to see about their services. But I will not start that until after our project, we've got the bids and the project started, then I'll be working on that. So I just wanted to give you all a heads up. I think it's important as we grow and look at the future of Captiva, that we have a plan in place to be able to continue what we want to do. And we need some goals, we need some solid goals. So I just wanted to communicate that out. I'll be working on that and updating you
That's great.
in my bi-weekly administrative reports, that process of how it's going.
Jennifer, can I amplify what you just said? First of all, I agree with you that we need to do this. There is a document in place, which is basically the beach plan, essentially, and it's basically a comprehensive beach management plan, which addresses strategic issues regarding the beach. That should be read. It doesn't address the bayside or resiliency or some other issue, so we need a bigger plan. But I would recommend that everybody needs to read that beach management plan. And then there's a separate document that's part of what used to be called the emergency plan, where we have funding to go forward and deal with the project if there is an emergency. And that has a great write-up in it, which Bob Gray subtracted from that a separate little agreement that simply spells out what we're all about. And I would encourage every commissioner to read that as well. That's really important that we know those things, because that's a basis before you can go into more broad strategic planning.
Okay. So John, do you know where those two plans are? Can we send them out?
I will look for them. I'm not sure, they must be in our archives somewhere.
Actually, I found it. Mike, didn't I send it to you? I found it about a year ago.
Yeah, so you give it to John and he'll redistribute it to everybody else. But that's not the beach management plan. That's the emergency.
That's the emergency management, you know.
All right, so you will look for that and send that out to everyone.
Yes. Oh, no, Dick has a question.
I just had one question. Have we appointed someone from the administrative staff to be the point person to talk to SCCF about sea level rise?
Yeah, Jennifer.
You are, okay, so you're the person. And you're going to be in all of the meetings when the community panel has a meeting?
I don't know about the community panel piece. I'm not sure. I know that when Ryan and I met regarding the captain position and in the original MOU that he sent me, I would be involved as a managing partner of this individual. It did not say anything about the sea level rise community panel meetings, but I don't see why I couldn't participate in those.
It's also going to be more of a, just saying where they're at and what they're going on, and then the panel will volunteer to say, okay, well, we will let our people know. It's not like it is set up purposely by Ryan to state, we want to do this, we want to be, we want to be in charge.
Yeah.
We want, this guy's going to be working or woman's going to be working 24/7. And as soon as we have some designs and ideas, then we're going to need all the organizations to go up, and, get support and all that. So the panel's role at that point is going to be to serve when needed, versus like they have their fees and they're going to say what's going on.
Renee, if I can add some amplification to that question. Last fall, we signed a memorandum of understanding with FGCU and the Southwest Florida Regional Compact. And at that point in time, the board appointed me to be the interface. They wanted to know who the interface was to that. So I was appointed to do that. So whoever we will ultimately decide to handle the issue in interfacing with the SCCF, we also have to address the issue of who is the interface to the Southwest Florida Regional Compact, which I currently have.
That would be you.
No.
Well, I think we should be able to combine those two in one position. So we'll talk about that another time, but we need to be able to have the same person talking to both organizations.
So it would be Jennifer then.
Jennifer, I think.
Yes, I would,
So Mike, you would want that role, you would rescind your direct role and have more of a man behind the curtain role and let Jennifer take on that responsibility also.
Why don't Jennifer and I talk about it and understand what it entails, okay?
Yeah, whatever you guys decide,
I've
whatever
already
you're
been,
comfortable with.
I've already been appointed by my other elected body to be the representative for the city of Cape Coral so that I
Yeah.
potentially avoid sunshine violations. So I'm happy to be on it, or Mike can be on it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll be on it anyway, so.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, you heard that, Mike, right?
Yeah, I think she and I should work together to sort it all out. I did hear I was aware of what she said also. She told me that previously.
All right, so two things, storage unit. John, do you want to talk to them about the issue?
Yes, so we have had a couple admin issues. I've gotten one straightened out at the post office, which was, our post office box was in Dave Jensen's name, but luckily she was very willing to help us out with that. The other problem is that the storage unit is also in Dave Jensen's name, so he owns the contents, this and that. They're giving me access to it, but they won't let me switch ownership. I would have to purchase another storage unit.
Is it our property?
No, it's Dave Jensen's. It's our property inside, but it's Dave Jensen's storage unit. So they're still allowing me access, but I can't change the ownership.
So wait a minute, just get one of the brothers to sign it over to us.
I was trying to maybe, instead of putting extra admin work on them, we could purchase a unit and just move the contents in the same store.
Why? That's more work. Just get John and Jimmy to sign it and then it's done.
Okay.
I mean, right, am I right or am I wrong?
I don't know. I don't know.
No, I
Can
think
you
you're better off
facilitate
having
that?
our
Yeah, 'cause-
property in our property.
But it is our property, but because of the lack of administration with Dave Jensen, God rest his soul, it was not in the CEPD name, it was in his name.
Right.
But it
And
shouldn't
instead
have
of,
been that way.
I just didn't want to bother whoever their family
That's like saying,
executor
here,
is.
take my credit card and, just let me know when the CEPD's done with it.
And just
I
talk
die.
to John.
Yeah, that's,
Because then you don't have to
Okay.
move it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion
Yes.
that we delegate this problem to our executive director to solve within her organization and come back to us if she has questions on how to handle it.
Perfect. I'll second that one.
Call the vote.
Call the vote. Aye.
Vice Chair,
Yes.
Aye.
Wow, Mr. Kaiser,
All right.
Mr. Mullins,
Aye.
Mr. McCall. All right.
Say
Motion
it
passes
loud,
unanimously.
Just let Jimmy sign it.
I don't know, so you'll have to give me the contact.
I'll give it. You go, yeah.
Okay, all right. Lastly, AV equipment. So I sent out a bid last week before last that we received on purchasing some audiovisual equipment so that we would have it permanently for our meetings. That was in response to the poor sound quality that we had at our previous meeting outdoors at SCCF. I'm not sure if our sound quality is still as bad now that we're inside. I'll wait for that feedback. But that is why I sent that bid out based on Chairman Bill's recommendation to go and look at purchasing something permanently versus renting something for the same price. Initially, we had thought that we would rent it, try the product out, see how it works, see if we liked it, and then make the decision to purchase. But given that the rental fee was so high, it made more sense to just go ahead and purchase it. So I wanted to bring that up for discussion and direction. I know, Mr. Brown, you had some concerns regarding it. I know that in our rules of procedure, the chairman is allowed to approve up to $2,500 without a board vote. But courtesy for Mr. Powell, our treasurer, I told Mr. Powell that I would bring this up for direction during this report.
My objection is that prior to COVID, we would have never needed this equipment. We are moving towards the post-COVID world. So why do we need the equipment after this COVID?
I've been.
No,
Continue.
but I just think if we're in charge of, stewardship for the funds of the CEPD, that we don't need to spend $2,000 or $3,000 on equipment that we didn't need prior to COVID, and post-COVID, we're not going to need.
That's where you're wrong. We do need it. Okay, so if I may take this on the other side of the argument. I thought about what you're saying, and technically you're right. And technically, there are new perks. For example, a lot more government officials will not have to travel here. Like Steve Patel used to travel back and forth. Captiva is not an easy place to get to. So we have to tie up a county person for half the day to attend the meeting. And Steve Patel used to come to the meetings. And sometimes other people will come to the meetings. So there's a wider reach through one of the things through Zoom meetings, and there's a wider reach to get your message out or for people to see what's going on. And in the case of when we hire people that have to give a report, there's the travel fee and the showing up fee. That could be $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. So since we are also, I'll use the word marketing, we are, a lot of concerned homeowners can now have the convenience of their phone or their laptop and see what's going on and ask a question and not have to tie up their day to show up. So if for a very small investment, forget the investment part, we have the ability to reach out and really expand the audience and also save a lot of other government entities a lot of money. And I guarantee you in 2 years, we'll easily save $10,000 or more for the engineering firms that charge us to show up and make a presentation. Savings is off the charts.
So Jennifer, what difference does it make in terms of being with this equipment post-COVID than what we did in 2019 or what you did in 2019?
I wasn't here in 2019.
And neither was I.
But it was my understanding that we had a tape recorder in the middle of the room to record the meetings.
Right.
The big difference is, as Chairman Bill stated, these Zoom meetings. So allowing people from the public who aren't comfortable coming in person, or folks from the county who don't want to drive all the way out to Captiva in the middle of the day, allow them to have this online experience. And in order for us to do that, the feedback from our past meeting was that the sound quality was awful and no one could hear what anybody was saying. So in an effort to try to elevate us, to make it so that we are current with the times and current with offering these remote options, purchasing the microphones would allow folks that are on the Zoom call and additional cameras to be able to see and hear everything, appropriately. So that's the biggest difference.
This is not going to change what we offered prior to COVID.
No, but we have to speak to me.
Because we couldn't offer remote because the commissioners had to be here.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we actually accomplishing by spending this $2,000?
What we're accomplishing is that we are giving the ability for any Captivian or anyone who's interested to press a button and hear everything and get involved or see what's going on. Last night, I watched my wife and 2 other women talk about beach apportionment. And between the 3 of them, the ownership of the homes on Captiva had to be at least 90 years. And not one of them had a clue as to what really the apportionment was. You should have heard the stories flying back and forth. So now, especially now when apportionment's coming up, beach renourishment, smart people, they're not going to ask their neighbor what's going on. Oh, there's a Zoom meeting. Let me check it out. Or, and watch it and say, oh, they were talking about the apportionment. It's like,
We don't have the equipment right now to have a meeting like that.
No, what we don't have, I'll explain. What we don't have is 8 microphones, so that when you want to speak and sound clear and distinct, you touch a button, just like they do at the city council meetings or the commissioners meetings, the school board meetings. So at a government public meeting, if we want to have the same set of training wheels that they all train wheels or whatever equipment, it's called a gooseneck mic, little teeny thing. And when you talk, the button goes on. And then when you finish, it goes off. Actually, and then at the same time, like this here, you see what's going on. And then it is mixed so that when people actually watch the meeting, that homeowners that are elsewhere, they can see with their own eyes what's going on. And some people say, hey, I want to get involved with that board. want to help, or I got an idea. Didn't they realize this? Well, I got to call the person
I
up.
watched the one today, they probably are saying. "I'm
No,
not gonna
they're
touch
laughing.
it."
They're laughing. They're probably like, this is Captiva. This is what like made Jensen.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
So-
fine.
Well,
That's
this
fine.
is like,
That's fine.
office equipment then.
That's totally what it is.
Well,
Yeah.
It's additional office equipment that we've
That's
never
it.
used before, but now we're gonna use
Well-
in the future.
remember I talked to you about working the tray to go to the cage?
Yeah.
Why did they improve that? I mean, let's.
So Jennifer, I understand the microphone. What does the camera do for me?
So the camera, if we have an additional camera, like right
So you're
now,
not
as you
done on the
see,
screen.
it's just shooting on you guys,
I
right?
can see the handsome
You can see what
Italian
we were
close
doing?
up.
We could get an additional camera, not right away, maybe later, that could shoot and look at the audience as well. So they can see all levels of the meeting, all of
Yeah,
them.
you can do that. I thought actually, you know, if you come with your notebook or your Zoom, you can mix it so that when.
Mr. Chairman, might I offer an opinion on this? I've had my hand raised. It doesn't seem to be noted.
Oh, okay, one.
Okay, first of all, I disagree with the premise that said we didn't need this before COVID, because we actually started the analysis of this equipment long before COVID, because we had more and more people who were looking at being involved and paying attention. And so we already decided we wanted to be able to use cameras. We started talking to some vendors about doing it and looking at basically having a microphone at each station, because frankly, the board needs to pay attention to the rules of procedure, and we need to get into the habit of raising our hands when we want to speak and then being able to be understood. So I think on an ongoing basis, it's a big plus to have people more involved, paying attention, and they'll be able to communicate even though they're absent from the meeting. Wherever they are in the country, they'll be able to be involved. So I think that this is absolutely needed. It was considered beforehand. And COVID, frankly, has also changed the world, that more people want to be active, involved in things that they can't physically be there for. And we have so much absentee ownership. I welcome the opportunity to allow these people who are anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world participating in our meetings, at least paying attention to what's going on. So having said that, I think it's a great idea. And I agree with both the administrator and the chairperson.
Right. It's
So
very-
there's one camera that will look at us and another camera that looks at the audience.
There's multiple ways.
Yeah,
That's
so-
one idea. I
Yeah.
can tell you other ideas too, as a former media photographer and all that. I think.
Could I make a motion that we approve the expenditure?
Yeah, well, we don't need it, but that's fine. We can make it just for ceremonial purposes.
Okay, so you.
I'll second the motion.
German, it's under $2,500.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
But-
Mr. Mullins, did you second it?
He
Sure.
I
said-
do, yes.
Okay,
And then just,
Call the vote.
okay, well, I just want a little teeny public, just one sentence. Okay, look, just for funsies. Let's see how much we save when engineers don't have to travel here to give a presentation. They can do it on the screen.
Okay.
I bet,
Let's
I bet
see
a
if
dollar
that's
to a
not-
donut that it's, we
The
save 10
the
grand.
invoice
in
down
2
in the
years.
corner is gonna say travel time. We don't wanna see that.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're gonna save a lot of
There's
trouble.
there's a favorite sales expression that says, when you sold, stop selling.
Yeah.
Call the vote.
Vice Chairman Sylvia,
Yeah,
Treasurer Pyle,
Yes.
Secretary Kaiser,
Yes.
Commissioner Mullins,
Yes,
Chairman LaVille.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
okay, great. Thank you. That's all I've got.
$2,500.
Okay, is there anyone else who would like to make a comment? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
no, wait a second. You gotta identify it as commissioner's comments. I didn't know what you were talking about. That you're talking about.
Commissioners' comment, commissioners. is
Yeah, on
there-
commissioner's comments,
Commissioners,
I mentioned in my email,
I'm new with this.
when you're done, Renee,
Yes.
I'm happy
Commissioner-
if you want to go alphabetically through the board, but I do have comments I want to make.
Oh, okay, well, please, by all means.
Okay. When I wrote to Jennifer, I also mentioned the fact that we were having a lot of problems last year before she came on board, where the meetings were held, comments would be, had, an action item would be identified and nobody would act on it. The next month, that nothing happened with it. And John, you were involved in this, and I'm surprised that we're not doing it in the meeting each time. You're supposed to be asking about action items and assigning them to whoever it is that is assigned to by the chair or by the board or whatever, who volunteers. So like, for example, Renee, an action item for Renee is to give us a report back, next month on how he's doing with this parking thing, let's say, just as an example. Or Daniel to give us there's a bunch of items that have been discussed today that translate into action items, like a timeline being published on the hearing and the apportionment work and so on. So all I'm saying is that we need to reinstitute that. You probably see action items in some of the minutes in January or December. So I'd like to understand, John, is there a reason that has consciously been dropped, or has that just been overlooked?
That it hasn't been dropped, it hasn't been added on the minutes. So what would happen is that we would notate them here, the minute taker would notate them on hers, we'd get the sheet back, but we wouldn't include it on the minutes because that was for office purposes.
Okay, well, the action items need to be on the minutes, in my opinion. I'd like to know when I see somebody say, I'm going to do something in March, that it's down identified as an action item, and the next month we see the minutes that say this action item has been changed, revised, whatever it may be. But I think it's too easy to drop things through the cracks, and I'd like to see us go back to specifically identifying those action items.
It holds people to the action of what they voted to. Absolutely, Mike, thank you.
Sure.
And Mr. Chairman, I'll make sure the floggings will continue until morality approves. No, meaning, yes, you're right.
Morale or morality?
Morale, and morale. Okay, so anything else, anybody?
No,
Okay, motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion and a second?
You have a motion to
and
adjourn?
I'll second it.
And, and I didn't even ask if anyone was opposed. Okay, I don't like this. I want to use the law and order jingle.
Right.
That was
Thank you
fun.
very much. Harry, nice to see you in person. Nice to see you in person.
Oh, yes.
Not with you just driving by and waving.
That's why I see him twice, or at least once a day.
Coming and going.
Yes, I go to the post office,
Yeah.
and you're out for your walk.